broken baker, where crimes are baked in every show. Mysteries rise and truth unfolding. Ready, set, it's time to go. We say it's time to go. Whistling through battering news, makes the story solving the lies. In this kitchen, secrets are broken, with a spark in our eyes. In the broken baker's kitchen, the secrets crumble like sunrise. We'll sift through clues to find the moves, with a spark in our eyes. In broken rise, broken rise. Welcome to the broken baker. Get ready. Let's go.
I'm Jimmy. How y'all doing?
The most important people in this case that everybody seems to have forgotten in this room is the jury. So we're going to take a 15-minute break and both sides take a pregnant pause and think about the jury.
I always feel seen when he says pregnant pause. Like, I've been there. I've done that. Thank you.
Exactly. Well, good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. So let's be real. Yesterday was a bit anticlimactic. We thought that Sarah was going to come out with shenanigans, all the shenanigans, possibly grow a second head, spew pea soup, all the Sarah things that Sarahs want to do.
Mhm.
And she did okay. She did okay. Now, does it ring of truth to me? No. But having sat back and thought about it, I get a much clearer point of how she processes information, takes it in through the lens through which she sees the world, and how she truly in her mind has absolved herself of a lot of this guilt. She
Mhm.
truly, to the bottom of her heart, believes that she was being attacked.
Yeah.
And because
her
she has
twist
so
up
many
world.
filters, she has so many filters, she has such an inability to understand how she interacts with the world around her, that it was able to give me kind of a lot more insight with how she processes things, because I think that's been a big kind of intrigue in the case, is how does she get from point A to point B? How does she get from, why are you hurting me, while he's, just putting his little hand out of the suitcase? Like, stop doing this to me.
Yeah.
Because, we were getting really mad by the sort of incongruity of, he is in a suitcase, but in Sarah's mind, he was doing something to her because he wasn't listening to her. He was breaking up her control.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of very interesting to see how she processes things. Now, I think all of us wanted the state go out there and, just lay the gauntlet down and, whoosh, glove smack all the way, full Simpsons episode, just go there. But I think they had to be very careful, because Sarah just got done showing really gruesome things. I mean, however these situations happened, there is video evidence of her injuries, and I think they have to be very, very careful about how they question that, especially with a DV violence, victim in the jury. I think that had they gone any harder, that it would have been very hard to sort of justify that, and could have been very off-putting.
Right. They had to approach it as if, like, well, what if people do believe her?
Yeah, and Sarah did did not help herself when she got snippy, when she, had amnesia, when she pretended like, "So what time of period are you talking about?" Like, "Okay, but which between which video and which?" And, you could tell that she was sort of trying to, again, play those little games.
Hmm.
And that's very atypical for someone who has been in a controlling, domineering relationship as the more submissive person. And she doesn't get that there's that disconnect. So
Right.
because she sees everything through this filter of her already being a victim, she doesn't realize that people who maybe see the world a little bit more in reality, those are kinda tells that she wasn't, submissive, she wasn't cowed, she wasn't terrified all the time. So,
Hmm.
the true story of who attacks who and who was always on who is probably somewhere in the middle, and we'll never know.
Right.
All that being said, if the state does not hammer her on rebuttal, I am done.
Yeah. I mean, they've had it a day. We'll see what comes out with the rest, but
I
I don't
did
know.
think it was interesting to notice there was friction between Sarah and Owens because she was trying to put in a lot of medical records for when allegedly she would lay hands on George. So I think she wanted those in for some who the hell knows why Sarah wants something in.
I don't, I don't think anybody understands Sarah's brain. We've got movement in court.
Is her girlfriend there?
I'm just going to add this. There's no sound yet, but we can kind of
Okay.
watch Judge come in and take out his laptop.
Oh, there's a
Um,
much better color on the guy on the other side. He doesn't look like he's hung over to death.
the guy on the left.
Yeah, because he was there yesterday morning and he looked like he had maybe stopped drinking about, 5 minutes before he had to be into the courtroom. He was regretting life choices.
Mm-hmm. Um, yeah, I also I think Sarah's just delusional.
Well, what
I
do you
think
think
she lives
about
in
Judge
her own head.
Yeah. What about Judge Cranick, letting I still don't see this hand being out while he's already being in the suitcase an overact. Now, I know he's trying to save this on appeal, but it did seem like a very odd thing to try to claim, "You're hurting me as you're contained and trying to get out."
Um, yeah, I mean, I also think he was probably up there like, well, she's probably going to bury herself. He was probably in his really him keeping it out was probably saving her from herself. And then putting it in, he's like,
Yeah.
well, if you're gonna
Well, I mean, I
do it,
know
do it.
that if there is a scintilla of,
Mm-hmm.
self-defense, then they need to bring it in. So if there's even like a possibility that one could be super enhanced on gummies and think this was self-defense, then they have to put it in.
Yeah,
So
I think Wolfram's right. It was definitely it was a stretch, but that's still a scintilla. And I don't
also,
know.
Sarah, if you're on trial for beating the schnell out of your boyfriend with a baseball bat and leaving him in a suitcase, maybe on cross, don't offer to, swing for the fences and do a demonstration. I'm surprised the state was like, "Yeah, no, we're not gonna do that." But she's like, "I could show you how I did it." Just like, what in the cartoon character is going
Yeah.
on here?
And for those asking or mentioning, Baker is out, not hiding from shame. He's going to get his guest star for the rest of the week, I guess, Monty. Um, but I think he needed a day off after that. That was
Yeah.
I really thought his head was gonna pop like a zit yesterday, like just explode
Well,
everywhere.
and I think that those of us who watch all the pretrial stuff and all of this, we know all of Sarah's lies. We know her exaggerations. We've poured over body cam. We have, read her inmate notes. So it is kind of understanding also that the jury doesn't know this and they shouldn't know this. They should be able to be impartial. They need to be able to take the stuff that, Sarah says and that is allowed to come into the trial and not be like us, YouTubers who know a lot more.
Right.
And while yesterday was upsetting and difficult to hear, I think it also, at least for me, gave me a better idea of how Sarah has built this in her mind.
Right.
Because if Sarah has built this in her mind, as she is always constantly terrified of George, whatever she does is not only, applicable, but in self-defense. It does make some of her assertions, some of her wanting to get certain things in, it makes sense. Like she was going to put in, her sort of
Narrative.
attempt or alleged laying hands on George, all of his
Yeah.
medical information on that, because she will just say, this is one more thing.
Yeah.
It, true, true MLS. I don't think I can pull up commenty deals.
Yeah.
True. I will say it was a difficult day for me, but I also learned a lot more about Sarah. And I think now certain things that didn't make sense to me as to sort of trial preparation and other things now make a little bit more sense.
Yeah. I think it's I don't know. I've given up on expecting the S show here.
Yeah,
Um
from what I gathered from the bald attorney, and I will one day remember his name, probably like 8 trials from now, I'll be like, "That guy's name was Henderson. I remember it now," or something. He did say that I believe they're going to bring Detective Copsell back to try to impeach her on, sort of, for lack of a better term, ex parte communication with Sarah to get her to, the trial.
yeah.
I didn't laugh at them, Dave. I think it's gross and disgusting. I don't think that it's authentic, and I think it sets people who are, if I was going to want a spokesperson, and I think this also goes to maybe my own internal bias, which I will admit. If I want someone who has lived my experience and is going to be the poster child for domestic, incidents, I don't want it to be Sarah Boone.
Right.
So so, yes, do I bring some personal bias into it? Absolutely. Do I think that the defense did what they could? Yeah. Now,
Whoa.
that's a ma'am, could you just cover your boobs and your behind? But no.
Yeah,
Also,
I
you work
guess
with your dad. Like, why would you just wanna be all boobagey out, like, just health and safety just out there, Tiana and Tawana out there for everyone?
exactly.
And MLS, you do make a good point. I admit I have personal bias in this. Like I said, I do never kind of lied about that, but I do think that it will be interesting to see now how the jury is going to respond to all of these stories. And I think that's the big sort of trump card, ace card, or Uno reverse card that we are
Hmm.
gonna all have to figure out is how are all of the jurors' personal experiences and different, interpretations going to work? And it is true. I wonder if their crime scene, reconstructionist is going to be able to explain some things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And I'm also wondering if maybe we'll just end up with a hung jury in this one. I think,
I
maybe that might be our result. I don't think that she's going to walk.
or lesser and included, and she goes for manslaughter.
Yeah.
Or do they have?
No, I don't think they can.
I don't think they can. Well, Dave, it's always been my dream to drink wine and turn into a true crimer. I'm going to get my tote that says law and crime soon.
I don't.
It's not negative vibes. This is a look, I have been kind of very open about how I feel about Sarah, and I know I bring personal bias into this case. I know I do. Um, but I can also be honest enough to say that Sarah brought out some fairly damning stuff about George. Very damning. And this is a hot button topic for a lot of people. People do
Mhm.
not like the idea of a man laying hand on a woman. And it is sometimes hard for, you know, people to see a woman as the aggressive person. So, it is also, like I said, I try to be honest with you guys when I have a bias. And I do. I do not particularly like Sarah Boone's use of this defense. I But I can understand why they are going for it, and I can understand why it is going to resonate with some people.
Right. And I mean, I think I'm biased just because I saw everything pre-trial, all of her dumb letters, all of her literally whining and complaining. And I mean, she chased off like 8 different lawyers because she's just, or 9, whatever number, just because she's so dang abrasive.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Madam Clerk's going to go ahead and call the case to order.
Case number 2020 CF 2603, State of Florida, Sarah Boone. Charged enough names for the record to get into the state.
David Ketchner on behalf of the state. William J. for the state.
Defense.
James Phillips for Ms. Boone.
Tony Henderson for Sarah Boone. Kevin Becker, we have service.
Ms. Boone, raise your right hand, please sworn. Please be swear or affirm that the testimony you give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do. Thank you.
And good morning. Can you state your full name and date of birth for the record for me?
Sarah Boone, 10-10-77.
Ms. Boone is seated at counsel's table wearing a dark gray suit jacket and a maroon blouse. She is in custody. However, she's not in any restraints, so we will be continuing to stand as our jury enters and exits. State, are there any housekeeping matters we need to address this morning before we bring in our panel? Defense.
Judge, I don't know if you got the email last night of the potential witnesses we're going to call.
In addition to the one I received this morning. Yes, sir.
Dr. Harper did get in last night after midnight. She was over at Hopeville, but in addition, we may recall the phone extraction expert. She's on the list.
Okay, understood. All right. Are we ready to bring in our panel?
Yes.
Okay. All right, very good. Let's go ahead and stand and bring in our panel.
And thank you, Broken Baker. Thank you, Strawberry Boone's Farm for Mo for the week. Life goal unlocked.
So, question though, if she is,
Yes.
if it does end up with a hung jury, she goes back to jail anyway, right?
I believe the state would then have to decide if they're going to retry this or what they're going to do. Maybe offer another plea deal with manslaughter, might be. I don't know. I am not a legalologist, but It's also how much more do they want to expend on this? And I don't mean, in theory, they should want to, always get justice or always resolve a case, but I can't imagine how much this has cost the state of Florida.
Right. I don't know. I mean, do I think she's going to go out and do it again? Probably not. I think she's a bigger pain in the butt to herself than anybody, and Brian and Lucas, who hopefully can just
What I
remove
do see,
themselves from it.
if she gets out, she will probably attract another person who is just as toxic, and they will be just as toxic. And do I think that there's a possibility of this happening again? Absolutely. Not in this instrumentality, not with a suitcase, but driving drunk, being combative, being aggressive. I see this being a tragedy. I'm not getting down. I do want to give credit where credit is due, and she did bring light a different part of the story. And I do think it's a hot button issue for some people.
All right, everyone can be seated. Members of the jury, good morning. Welcome back to 12 Alpha of the Orange County Courthouse. I hope you had a great evening. If you could, again, just by a show of hands, you complied with the court's instructions for the overnight break. Record reflect all hands have been raised. Members of the jury, at this point in time, the defense is going to continue with their evidence and testimony presentation. And I'm going to ask them to call their first witness at this time. Mr. Owens, you may proceed, sir.
At this time, the defense calls Deputy Ramirez Delgado.
What the heck?
Dave, I do not know if this is the hot detect. There you are, Dave. There's your hottie. I think my middle school Catholic gym teacher had that. Miss Hannigan had that haircut.
Can you please state and spell your name for the record for me?
Yes, sir.
And she's like,
my name is Jessica.
Let's do some dodgeball.
Jess.
What's that?
She was always like, come on, girls, do some dodgeball.
Yeah.
I was like,
she does kind of give me gym teacher vibes. Get it?
ICA. First last name is Ramirez, Ramirez. Second last name is Delgado, Delgado.
Thank you, ma'am. You may inquire, sir.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, sir.
Ma'am, how are you employed?
I'm a reserve deputy with the Orange County Sheriff's Office.
And how long have you been employed with the sheriff's?
7 years.
Back on July the 25th of 2018, how were you employed at that time?
I was a full-time deputy sheriff for the agency.
On that date, ma'am, did you have the occasion due to your duties to report or to?
thank you, Zach. 50 Donkey Kong coins or $1.37.
Thank you.
Thank you, Zach.
And can everybody hear? I mean, it's hard to hear the lawyer as it is, but just wanting to make sure we're okay on volume. Let me know in chat.
4748 Franks Lane, apartment number 3.
Yes, sir.
Do you recall what you were going there for?
Yes, sir. I was a backup deputy for a call involving a male kicking a female in the face. So it came out as a domestic call.
Okay. And was it another officer who also responded?
Yes, sir. He was the primary.
Okay. Ma'am, while you were there, did you have contact with Sarah Boone?
Yes, sir.
While having contact with Ms. Boone, were you able to observe any injuries?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. She had swelling and bruising in her right eye.
And ma'am, were you able to make contact with Mr. George Torres?
Yes, sir.
Were you able to notice any injuries on his person?
Yes, sir. He had red markings and some abrasions around his neck.
Ma'am, at a certain point in time, did you place Ms. Boone under arrest?
Yes, sir. I detained her and placed her in my vehicle.
Ma'am, at that time, do you recall or remember
Oop, sorry.
Ms. Boone asking you, why am I in trouble?
Yes, sir.
And without saying what you said, but did you respond to her?
Yes, sir.
After that, ma'am, do you remember Ms. Boone asking you why? Because I fucking fought back.
Yes, sir.
The trash mouths.
Wasn't this the one where she kept calling her baby or sweetie? Like,
I don't know. I don't remember
because I
that.
remember one of the body cams, the officer was trying to speak with her, and she's like, "Yeah, you go in there, baby. You talk to him, or sweetie pie, or." But it was always these weird kind of endearments that I didn't understand.
Yeah. I agree. I want the video. But I don't know. I don't think they would play it.
Right, ma'am, one moment.
Yes, sir.
No further questions.
Thank you. Any cross-examination?
During the course of your investigation, you or the other responding deputies spoke to Mr. Torres as well.
Yes, sir.
After concluding all of your investigation, which involved talking to both Mr. Torres and to Ms. Boone and making your observations of the two of them, did you all make final decisions about how to handle your investigation?
The other deputy, which at the time was Deputy Zito, was the one that made that determination.
Okay, but collectively, what you all looked at was statements from Ms. Boone and Mr. Torres, correct?
Yes, sir.
And your physical observations of both persons? Yes. And then whatever else you may have observed on scene?
Yes, sir.
And do you take into account people's demeanor when they are giving you statements when assessing their credibility?
Yes, sir.
No.
Zach.
Thank you, Zach. Baker appreciates it. Did her bangs get divorced? They're separated right now. Look, they're trying it out. They're going to see if they can get back together. But for right now, they're both living free and fancy. Damn it.
They're in counseling. Thank you, Zach.
Any redirect examination?
How are you, Your Honor?
Can this witness be released?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So the defense was able to get in there that Sarah felt that she was being arrested for fighting back, which I think will help
Defense,
them
call
with
your next
their...
witness.
At this time, the defense calls Deputy John Alden.
She is just giving them health and safety just all up in the camera today.
Yeah. Apparently, they're not here to entertain us. They're just here to do a trial.
Ah. Well, he is bald, so we know he is, in fact, a police officer.
Good morning. Can you state and spell your name for the record?
John Alden.
What was that?
I said, well, he is bald, so we know he is, in fact, a police officer. We don't need to go through his CV. There's like bald, check.
You've got the uniform, you've got the hair, lack thereof. You're good. Let's stipulate you're credentialed.
Yes.
John Alden.
All right, thank you, sir. You may be seated. Mr. Henderson, you may inquire.
Good morning, sir.
Morning.
Sir, how are you employed? How are you employed?
I'm employed with the Orange County Sheriff's Office as a corporal.
Back on August the 28th of 2019, how were you employed?
I was a deputy in Uniform Patrol Division in Sector 2.
As a part of your job duties that day, did you have the occasion to respond to 4748 France Lane, number 3?
Yes.
What was the purpose?
There ended up being a battery call.
And, sir, were you the lead officer on this case?
Yes.
Were there any other backup officers there with you?
I believe so.
Sir, on that date, August the 28th of 2019, did you come in contact with Sarah Boone?
Yes.
Sir, on that date, did you observe any injuries on Sarah Boone?
I observed redness on the left side of her neck and what to be an old injury to her right eye.
Sir, on August 28th of 2019, did you come in contact with George Torres?
Yes.
And did you notice any injuries on Mr. Torres?
Yes. He had some redness on it by his left eye.
Sir, on that day, was Mr. Torres placed under arrest?
Yes.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Any cross-examination?
Yes. Is it fair to say that Mr. Torres had quite a few marks on him?
From my report, I remember marking the redness by his left eye.
And did you have the body worn camera activated when you responded to this call?
I believe so.
Right. And so that would be the best evidence of both video and audio as to what occurred while you were on scene.
It would, especially since this happened 4 years or 5 years ago now.
And did Mr. Torres refuse to say what happened that day?
He did.
Based on the conclusion of your investigation, which involved talking to Ms. Boone and attempting to talk to Mr. Torres, as well as your visual observations of both them and the scene, is that how you all reach your conclusions?
Yes.
No other questions?
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Can this witness be released?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Kay?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Defense, you can call your
I
next
think for
witness.
some people, that might be an issue.
Yeah.
That George is male, and we typically think of, depicted in media and everything of males being the aggressor, males being the one. And I do think that unless they are able to get in Brian with some of the things that he had to deal with Sarah, or possibly George's family, or even the apartment manager, people that have seen both sides, I think that it's going to be very hard for some people to really make this understood in his brain or in their brain, because they won't see George as maybe the one who was cowed. So it will be very interesting to see how now both the state and the defense are going to use these to paint the picture that they want to paint.
Right. I mean, at this point, they're just showing that they hurt each other. I don't know. We'll see.
Judge, may we approach him?
Yes.
Oh, boy. Yeah, that's true.
I thought they were going to call back Detective Copsel to maybe impeach her on getting the call. I wonder if they found call records that show that Sarah called her the night before.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Also, I mean, these are two alcoholics
Yeah.
stumbling.
Defense, you can call your next witness.
I've woken up with a few bruises and not from somebody, but from my own clumsy self running into things.
True.
Sober. So maybe they
Judge,
bruise
at this
easily.
time, the defense calls Deputy Coswell. Or Detective, excuse me.
Coswell?
Oh no, he didn't call her deputy. It's Detective Goodhair, damn it.
What's he Googling?
I don't know. I was
I
trying to
have
see if
lunch.
his screensaver was Sarah and him in a little selfie mode.
With bars between them.
I mean, he has introduced something new to the case. It's just hard for me to buy what Sarah is selling, but it's definitely possible that other people will buy it. I am not a juror. I am just me.
Yeah.
So,
I'm trying to look at it
oh,
as a juror,
wait,
but
here's the hot one.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes.
Good morning again. Could you state your full name and date of birth for the record? Or, I'm sorry, full name and spell it for us.
again.
It's Chelsea Kepsel, Chelsey. Last name is Koepsell.
Thank you. Counselor, you may inquire.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
I'm so sorry.
In relation to this case, on February the 26th of 2020, did you have the occasion to interview Abraham Marino?
Yes, it did.
Was that interview recorded, ma'am?
Yes, it was.
You remember as part of that interview that Mr. Marino tell you that he had contact with Sarah Boone on February the 24th of 2020?
Are you asking the night of the incident when police were called out?
Yes, the next morning.
The day that we were called.
That you were called out.
Okay.
The 24th.
So yes, he did have contact with her, but it wasn't in the morning. It was while we were there.
While you were there?
Yes.
What time did you get there? That's probably what's going.
I got there around 14:20 hours, which would be 2:20 in the afternoon.
Okay. So the afternoon on the 24th.
No, it was later. I recall, I believe I was doing paperwork in my vehicle. So it would have been at some point during the investigation, but it wasn't, I didn't notice him until, I'm not sure if I noticed him until before or after Sarah was interviewed.
All right. But to his interview part, the interview, did he tell you in the interview that he had contact with Miss Boone on that day?
Yes, he did.
Did he tell you at that time that Miss Boone had made a statement to him?
Yes, he did.
Do you remember what that statement was?
I don't wish to quote what he stated. So I don't know the exact verbiage, but he basically replayed what, I'm not sure if he replayed what exactly occurred that day, but I do know he mentioned something about, she mentioned being dragged down the stairs a couple days prior.
Did he say to you during that interview that Sarah Boone told us that a couple of days ago they had gotten into a fight where he grabbed her by her hair and dragged her down the steps?
I would assume that he's reading my report, and that does sound similar to what my report should say.
So this statement was given on the 27th of February. I'm sorry, the 26th of February. Would you
Yes.
agree with that?
Yes, I would.
Okay. The contact and the statement that Ms. Boone made to Mr. Moreno was on the 24th of February. Is that correct?
Repeat the question. I'm sorry.
When Mr. Moreno is saying that Ms. Boone came up to him and made this statement that we just talked about,
Yes,
that was on February the 24th. Is that correct?
that is correct.
So when she said a couple of days ago, that would have brought it back to February the 22nd. Is that correct?
Potentially, yes.
Ma'am,
Melissa,
in that interview with you, that Mr. Moreno
oh, I was just, where is he going with this? They might be trying to impeach the whole he dragged him down the stairs, or he, by again laying out doubt that, you know, the roommates or the people, neighbors that shared a wall might have been hearing something happening against Sarah and not the suitcase incident. They just got their times mixed up. So this is another to kind of bolster Sarah's story, sort of corroborate. Now, again, we are still relying on Sarah to get these facts. And then you have to completely, think that the, neighbors are just completely out of sorts. They both came across as not having a dog in the fight, not being for one side or the other. So it does kind of, we'll go back to, does the jury believe them or do they believe Sarah? I will say, they both came off as kind of, why am I even here? And yeah, this is what we heard. So if the state doesn't bring up, you will have to, weigh all of the evidence and all of the witnesses.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine that she was drugged downstairs by the hair, resulting in a loud enough sound that neighbors could hear it. And the way she bruises easily, according to her, and then not have any bruises. That does. Hi, wine mom number 1 or number 2?
I'm just trying to get the audio. Now I think I did it. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
And now I have you in my earphones.
Ooh.
Well, it's the traveling setup, so. But everyone's crying today.
I am not crying. I just, having been so kind of just grossed out yesterday, I really had to process that. And I think it's the defense knows what he's doing in that this is a hot button issue. But to me, she didn't come off as believable. I don't believe her. I don't think anyone who's ever actually suffered, actually been afraid of someone. Again, I go back to going to sleep. You wouldn't go to sleep.
That's my big problem in all of this. I was terrified. I slept for 14 hours. And that's the part that I rewatched it this morning because I did the update and I had it on while I was driving the car up here. And we will have the 2 experts, state and defense, who did her BSS evaluation. She told completely different stories to them as well. But she, trust me today, don't trust me in all the other interviews I gave because I was afraid. No. At no point so far have you ever mentioned anything about this until you went to prison and learned something about battered spouse syndrome. I still think listening to those videos, how many of you can rewatch those videos without feeling a primal fear coming from the audio?
And Dave, she didn't say she passed out once. No,
No.
she would go to bed and barricade herself.
Yeah.
Now, again, that makes no sense to me. That makes no sense because that is something I myself would have never put myself in a vulnerable position if I was so daggone terrified. If I was beyond terrified and worried and I know he's going to be out of control, I am not falling asleep.
No,
And
until
that was a
until he
routine.
passes out, you stay awake.
Yeah, but she made it sound like it was a routine, and no matter how many times she barricaded the door, you don't barricade the door, it fails once, and you stay there and go back to sleep multiple times. That's not how functional people work, or people that can, I don't know. I'm not buying what she's selling. She told her side of the story,
Yeah,
but
and she's allowed to lie because what's worse, getting 2 years for perjury or getting life in prison? I just
Right.
hope that, but I always have too much faith in Americans because I always get the jury wrong. But no one who listens to the videos can hear again, her story. He was begging for his life. He was crying wolf. And right after she turned off the camera, he turned into the Incredible Hulk with his arm impossibly getting out over his head. I hope they have someone who can. I want a demonstrative saying that's not possible in any way. And then he said, "I'm gonna effing kill you." I just sat down so I could show him the next day. I was changing scenery. Girl, please. You shared 5 bottles of wine. 5. He had an blood alcohol of 1.3. That's roughly 5 beers. In a man my size, he's a third of my size. If he got that half bottle of wine that they had left over, which is a full bottle, I could believe he was roughly around that point at the end of the night. That means someone else drank 4 bottles of wine. Yeah, and no, he didn't hit her, but she was afraid of the hand.
Right.
This isn't Adam's family. The hand can't act on itself. And again, he was in a fetal position. Try go into a fetal position and move your hand above your head while you are strapped up. Go to a wall, push yourself up against the wall, and do this. It's really hard when your arm is locked. The state just have to, in my opinion, get someone who can testify and saying it's not credible. She should have lied and put the opening at the hand or at the side, because then he could get the hand out there. Plus, she lied about the opening. It was 2 fingers. He could get 2 fingers out. He had an entire hand sticking out. I'm just saying, in your closing, bring out all the discrepancies and finish it off, Sarah. And she'll be toast. Don't worry about it.
Burnt toast.
But give it up for all the people who believe she's innocent because he was bad to her. Did you notice all of these officers testified about events a year before this? All of his battered spouse inducing violence was a year before. She finally got the courage to beat him with a baseball bat and lock him up so he suffocated. Again, tell a good story in closing, and what will the defense say? Well, he was mean to her. He beat her. Yeah, but there was no imminent danger. No imminent danger.
Yeah, I doubt the overact. I understand why the judge had to let it in for appellate reasons, but I've never been afraid enough of a hand that I went out, swinging like it was the end of Signs.
Right. With a baseball bat.
Yeah. Well, let's get back to the
Please.
case. I'm just rambling again.
Marino ever indicate to you that when he had contact with Miss Boone on the 24th, that Sarah Boone told him what happened was an accident?
How can it be accidental self-defense?
And did he say that Sarah Boone stated that she was teaching him a lesson and things got out of hand and that she fell asleep?
I don't recall the entirety of that being accurate. Yeah, I don't recall the entirety of what he just said being accurate.
Do you remember him saying that at all?
He did say that she had, I believe he said on the recording, passed out. So that's why, like, part of the statements might be accurate, but.
Ma'am, would it refresh your memory if you were to see the recorded statement?
His recorded statement,
Yes.
transcription?
Yes.
Sure, yeah, great.
May I approach the witness?
You may.
Exactly, Nick. You can't accidentally self-defense.
Okay.
When you,
Dang, was on my life bucket achievement list, but guess I'll have to take it
Recall all
off.
the statements that you asked.
Oh,
the way
man, I
you
thought they
asked
were gonna play it.
would it help if I repeat it?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
You asked, like, you said multiple statements,
Yes,
so
ma'am.
this was a like 11-minute interview.
All right. The statement would be that Sarah Boone stated to Mr. Marino that she was teaching him a lesson and things got out of hand and that she fell asleep. And I'm wanting to
Okay,
know.
so now she's accidentally teaching him a lesson in self-defense.
Yes. It's a self-defense class he didn't sign up for.
Right.
Oh, I need to do that grifting class. That reminds me.
And I'm wanting to know.
Did you say, okay, I thought I heard you say passed out the first time. I'm not sure if you said passed out or fell asleep.
Fell asleep.
Fell asleep, okay.
And what I'm asking is there any indication that he told you that statement on the date of that interview on the 26th?
Sorry, I'm trying to go to the part where we talked about that.
Yes, ma'am. Take your time.
Okay. Okay, so like I had stated, there were certain things that I thought was accurate from your statement. He stated, do I just read exactly what it says? Do you need like the number next to it or anything?
Yes, I have no problem if you reading what he said.
Okay, then she.
Approach.
Why not play the recording?
Yeah, play the recording so we get the tone, tonality, I think the word is. And
Yeah.
Ma'am, you cannot read the statement at this time.
Okay.
Thank you. You may continue, Mr. Henderson.
He described.
Hang on. No, just wait for a question.
So
Okay,
sorry.
it's okay.
Yes, sorry.
Ma'am, and anywhere in that interview, do you see reference to this statement that Sarah stated that she was teaching him a lesson and things got out of hand and that she fell asleep?
No to the first two parts of your question. I heard passed out the first time you asked me this question, and that's why I said that part of it was accurate, because he did say that she passed out in his statement. That was what Sarah told him.
Okay, did she say she was teaching him a lesson? Is that in there?
No.
And things got out of hand. Is that in there?
No, I don't recall that.
May I approach the witness?
Yes.
just put it at
Again, ma'am, this interview was on February the 26th of 2020.
What was that?
Just put it at 1.25 with this guy. He's slower than I am.
Is that correct?
Yes, it was.
Thank you. I have no further questions. Any cross-examination?
No other questions, John?
All right, thank you. Can this witness be released?
Yes, Your Honor.
State?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Defense? Go on, next witness.
I believe Dr. Brandon is here. Madam Judge.
All right.
Making sure.
Now the BSS expert. Just speed it up while we wait for this. It's two. No one's saying anything. Put it at 2.
So what I will say is that I don't think the first 2 witnesses they called this morning did anything for them.
Yes, sir.
And I wonder if the state will bring those body cams in for rebuttal.
I don't know if they could have done it now. I don't know if this is the right way my microphone should be facing, but I'm just, why bring them in and say, yeah, he had marks, she had marks. When they open about past transgressions, they should be allowed to put in that video where she's giddy like a schoolgirl and ends up almost wanting to fight the cops. Put that in evidence. That should be, yeah, I think it's a directional mic. I use this in my bakery videos. So, but at least this camera is working way better than the 5 times as expensive one I normally use on this laptop. But I still feel that, yeah, let's give them some wins in the column yesterday, but still, what have they done today? Said, well, they had a tumultuous relationship. Now is the big one. Hey, Shizzy. This lady, if she don't get you 100% convinced that that she was a battered spouse,
This time it's called Dr. Michael Brandon. I forget.
then I can, because remember the state will have a rebuttal to her as well.
Yeah. Anyone find it optically odd that they're using a male psychologist to talk about battered spouse syndrome? Just optically, that doesn't seem like what I would choose, but.
I do. Doctor, good morning. Could you state and spell your name for the record for us?
Michael Brandon, Brannon.
Thank you. Counselor, you may inquire.
Dr. Brandon, good morning.
Good morning.
Ms. Fry, having just traveled from Miami to Orlando.
Yes.
Am I correct? Okay.
It was a good drive.
Would you please describe for the jury your background, training, and experience, both in forensic psychology as well as battered women syndrome?
Sure. So I'm a psychologist licensed in the state of Florida. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology. That's from a university called Nova University. I also have a master's degree in psychology. I received that in 1980, also in psychology. And I received my doctoral degree in psychology after a year internship where I worked with severely mentally ill individuals in Hialeah, Florida. In 1988, I finished my degree requirements for my doctorate in psychology. And in 1990, I was licensed as a psychologist. I've been operating as a psychologist since then, since 1990. Originally, I started off doing the work that most people kind of think about when they think about psychologists, doing therapy, counseling with people, helping them through with their problems, things like that. In 1994, I began on a career almost quite accidentally as a forensic psychologist when I testified in my first case in front of a jury. And from that time on, I've been doing mostly forensic psychology. My practice very quickly changed from that time on. I'm currently the co-director of the Institute for Behavioral Sciences and the Law, and anywhere between 80 and 90% of all my work now is related to some legal or court-related matter in the ways in which mental health interfaces or impacts or helps to give opinions about various legal issues. I've taught rather extensively in the area of forensic psychology. I teach to mostly legal audiences, but oftentimes too, I speak to groups of psychology students who want to sit up here and do what I'm doing as well. Make long drives and come up here and talk to people about cases. I also currently on the staff, the adjunct faculty staff for the School of Psychiatry at Florida Atlantic University. I help to train their forensic psychiatrists, so not just psychologists, but psychiatrists in terms of doing this work as a psychologist or as a psychiatrist, a mental health professional who gives opinions in the courtroom.
And are you also required to update your educational background and knowledge as a forensic psychologist?
Yes, sir. So sure. So every 2 years, we're required to get 40 continuing education credits to maintain our license. And part of that is we have to, on a regular basis, update our work in domestic violence or battered women syndrome. So we have to take those courses. We're all required, whether you're a forensic psychologist or not, to take that coursework. So as part of our requirements, we also have to take separate coursework in regards to domestic violence as a general term, or intimate partner violence. But along with that comes discussion as well with battered spouse, or what's oftentimes called battered person syndrome now.
And I apologize. I'm kind of bouncing around here, Doctor. I apologize again. For the uninitiated, just exactly what do you mean by forensic psychology?
So forensic psychology is a division of psychology. Most people don't think about that as often when they think about psychologists. But forensic psychologists are individuals who have degrees in psychology who are working to help to answer questions that come up in the legal system. It could be in criminal cases like we're here for today, answering various criminal questions, giving opinions about those questions. Or it could be in other settings like family settings, divorce proceedings, or sometimes civil settings like personal injury. Someone's claiming some emotional damage or something has happened to them. So forensic psychology is really the way that we use the science of psychology to help give opinions about various legal matters.
Now, what is the DSM or the DSM-5?
So the DSM stands for Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. It's kind of our code book, if you will, to help us to know what the different symptoms are for different mental health disorders, whether it's major depression or schizophrenia or anxiety. So it gives us a code book of here's the criteria you have to meet in order to have that diagnosis. And then we're able to utilize that in terms of either treatment, so even insurance billing, but being able to inform patients too about what condition we think that they're suffering from. It's been updated many times over the years. It started just DSM, and now it's at the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual 5th edition, text revised. So we've gone through a lot of revisions over the years to try to fine tune in an empirical or scientific way what the elements are, if you will, of various mental health conditions.
Now, you've been asked to testify today in regards to battered women syndrome. Is the battered women syndrome identified or located within the DSM-5?
So it is not. It is not a diagnostic category in the DSM-5 or other coding books as well. There's others besides the DSM. That's just the most popular one. But it's not a formal diagnosis that it is contained within that book, that classification manual that I just told you about.
Within your field of forensic psychology, however, is there a subcategory that is located within the DSM-5 that experts would recognize as a DSM diagnosis?
Yes, sir.
And what is that, sir?
So that category would be in the trauma section of the DSM-5 TR. There's a whole category on trauma disorders, and it's most closely related to something that we call post-traumatic stress disorder. That isn't the only trauma disorder, but that's the one that what used to be called battered women syndrome. Now I refer to it as battered person syndrome, but all of it really is more connected to a trauma disorder like post-traumatic stress disorder.
Now, you testify in criminal matters. Do you also testify? You indicated also on personal injury cases and emotional. That would be civil, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. In your experience, you've testified as an expert, as a forensic psychologist. You testified for, and today you're testifying for the defense, or were called by the defense. Do you also testify for the state of Florida or other states within this country?
Yes to both those. I've testified in other states. I also testify for both prosecution, the state or government, depending if it's federal or if it's a state case, and also for the defense. So I really get appointments and hired by both sides.
But how many times have you testified?
Wow. At last count, it was about 1,500 times. It's over that, way over that now. That was from a few years ago. But I testify in a lot of different kinds of hearings and trials over the course of, mostly in Florida, but in other states as well.
Now, you're familiar with the fact that there is a special jury instruction that's been recognized by the Florida Supreme Court.
Approach.
So thank you, Nicholas, for the super chat. This is the guy that Jodi Arias needed and didn't get. I'm still hoping he will explain my attitude. I'm hoping for penis envy, because that's what I've always been shooting for, as to an explanation for my attitude. But thank you so much for the super chat, Nick.
All right, let me see if I can. There we go.
I apologize. Doctor, you testified as to battered women syndrome, battered person syndrome. Are there other synonyms or similar names?
Apologies, the mics are all over the place here, so we're just trying to get it so we can hear everybody.
Yeah, the witness mic will be hot because the lawyer mic is low. So
Yes.
it's the worst of both worlds, just like Hannah Montana.
Truth.
For what you're describing, in particular, battered spouse syndrome.
Well, we talk about it in terms of trauma disorders, like post-traumatic stress disorder, but the way when it's applied to the legal system, it's called battered wife, or that was the original terminology for it, battered wife syndrome or battered person syndrome. So it really depends on your setting. So in this setting, we oftentimes talk about this particular condition that I've been asked to talk about today, is really referred to as battered spouse syndrome.
And have you been asked to give your opinion as a legal expert on battered spouse syndrome?
Yes, sir.
How frequently have you been asked to do that?
I've been involved in about 100 cases. Of just that alone, I've been involved in some sort of testimony about 50 times.
Thank you, Toilet Carissa. Apparently that means butts.
Oh.
What is that? Where are you?
I think he's trying to show a picture. Oh, it's
Aw.
Puppers.
Is that Monty?
Oh.
He's so cute.
Yeah, he's way easier than he's way easier than the other one, because he just sleeps, wakes up, go to another bed, sleeps, go for a walk, sleeps.
He looks like he would be
Love
the
it.
gassy type.
He is very gassy, and he started the day with puking on the carpet. So
Oh no.
it's no, it's not Molly, it's Monty. This is the other brother's house.
And you indicated that you testified for the state, you testified for the defense, you testified in state cases, federal cases. Could you break down on a percentage basis the number of times you testified for the state versus testifying for the defense?
It's really close in terms of last time we looked at it, it was about 50-50. On most cases, like for instance, if there's a case that involves battered spouse, potentially battered spouse or battered wife syndrome, I'm usually called by the defense first because they raise the issue. If you're called by the prosecution, whether it be federal or state, what oftentimes happens is it's in response to a defense expert that's been called. So do I agree or disagree with that other expert? So I'm usually, the call usually comes first from the defense, but in terms of who I'm hired by, it's pretty even. It's about 50-50.
Now, this time you are no proffered witness of the expert in field forensic psychology.
Yes, approach.
And thank you for the doggo super sticker. Hey, Joe.
Thank you.
I love that my own YouTube channel says, "Oh, this is spam." But Helen, he's 3 or 4 years old.
Oh.
It's because I wrote too fast or something. I love YouTube.
Ugh, I thought we were done.
Has battered spouse syndrome been accepted, to your knowledge, in the Florida court system?
Yes, sir.
Objection, legal conclusion?
Same.
Can you describe the classic systemology wherein an individual might necessarily suffer and then exhibit symptoms of battered women syndrome?
Yes. So battered spouse syndrome is usually a woman's response. Doesn't have to be, but that's a classic historical research went into how women respond in situations in which there's intimate partner violence when they've been the victim of violence. Now we know, of course, in other kinds of relationships, men can be a victim of it as well, as whether it's a heterosexual or homosexual relationship, that both men and women can be victims. But we still know the majority of those individuals that are diagnosed with that condition or given that condition, classified with that condition, are women. We do know that it's a reaction,
Well,
a
she's
strategy
actually not,
that's developed by the
she
person who's
didn't claim
being abused
self-defense.
to someone who's abused.
So she's not innocent. She is clearly guilty because she claimed the entire time it was an accident. And as Dave knows, because he is a lawyer, there's no accidental self-defense, even if someone will try and blow that much smoke up your behind. So
Wait a minute. No accidental self-defense. I'm having to change a few plans here.
yeah, well, if the car door accidentally drops on your husband, just don't say it was to teach him a lesson.
Right.
You can't
So,
self-defense
we were
after
playing-
teaching someone a lesson.
What about tag with a car?
Well, that's
Like
playing.
he said, well, yeah, or lawn darts.
And he started it.
Yeah.
What if you're doing diamond painting and you stabby him with a pen?
Courtney Clenny had a guy throwing knives at a
I
pig's
saw
carcass.
that.
We might look at that at some point.
Yeah,
Oh, God.
we definitely need to see that. I need your take.
Using them in an intimate partner situation. And essentially what they're doing is they've made a determination that they can't effectively escape from the abuse. They can't just leave for some reason. They feel in danger or they've been threatened if they leave that something bad will happen to them. So it's a cognitive or thinking strategy on the part of the person being abused that I have to develop some coping skills or ways of protecting myself or maybe even loved ones as well from some form of imminent violence or danger or lethality. Something bad will happen to me if I don't develop a way of handling this abuse, this constant abuse that's coming towards me. So the battered wife syndrome is really a way of thinking. It's a psychological change that happens with a victim in terms of the way they cope and strategize to stay safe for themselves and other loved ones as well, oftentimes.
I'm going to ask a really silly question, if I may, Doctor. I don't know if you've noticed a bruise across the bridge of my nose this morning.
I did see that when I came in. Yes, sir.
Okay. This weekend, hypothetically, if an individual was digging around in the garbage, the lid fell down and cut his nose, the bridge of his nose wide open, would you, as a forensic psychologist, anticipate, or psychologist in general, anticipate that there might be a physical or a psychological reaction or response to that degree of trauma?
So I don't know if it would be trauma or not. It could be, depending on the degree of the injury and the pain and things like that. But certainly you'd view that garbage can differently as you approached it. So it changes your psychology or the way that you look at that particular situation or that particular object. So by viewing it differently, you may engage in different behaviors. You may approach it differently. You may have somebody else approach it. You may approach it with both hands up. So it changes your behavior and your thinking about that garbage can.
Dumpster, don't get me. Oscar, we will bring you only the best trash. Damn you.
Is Oscar the Grouch being introduced as a witness here? Because, is this the most ridiculous thing ever, or?
Okay, so what battered spouse is supposed to, it's not even a legal defense. It was kind of to explain why the person who is being abused does not leave, and then sometimes goes into dramatic self-protection when maybe a lot of reasonable people would say, well, why did you blow him away when he was on the couch asleep? You could have left. That is what battered spouse is supposed to do. Why we're bringing your trash can experience into the whole thing, I don't know, but you shine on, you crazy, brilliant diamond, you, sir.
Oh my gosh. This one actually got me cracking up.
I'm just saying that I might have battered a can or two in my time. I don't know if they got a syndrome after.
I mean, now it makes me understand why I'm afraid to go up the stairs since I fall down them so much, going up the stairs and you miss a step. I mean, it explains why I don't go upstairs anymore. Sir, you have answered all my questions. I feel so much better about myself.
This is so dumb. I love it.
Does that also apply to interpersonal relationships?
So it certainly can. No two people always react the same way to every situation. One person's trauma is not a trauma to another person. But for people who do develop battered spouse syndrome, they do begin to change the way they view the person who's abusing them and what they have to do in order to maintain either their life or their safety, their physical safety in terms of their behavior and interactions with that person.
Now, is there a specific set of criteria that a psychologist, forensic psychologist, would necessarily rely upon in attempting to make a diagnosis or an assessment of battered women syndrome?
Yes, sir.
And what are those criteria?
Well, you'd want to see one if some type of abuse has occurred. That abuse can be physical, it can be sexual, it can be emotional, or it can just be the threat of abuse or bad things that's going to happen to you. So there has to be something bad that's happened or that's threatened to be happening over a period of time. So abuse has to be present in order for this to be underway. Without abuse, there's no battered wife syndrome. But that's not enough. There also has to be what's called coercive control. Coercive control is really keeping the person's social interactions, overseen on a regular basis, controlling money, controlling preferences, even TV preferences, sometimes social media, looking at social media that the person is accessing or looking at, who they're talking to on Facebook, who they're texting. So it's a combination of abuse and coercive control that results in a person feeling victimized, but that's still not enough. That person then has to feel like they can't escape from that. They've either been told, if you leave me, you're going to die, or a family member is going to be harmed. Your children, your mother, whatever it might be.
With her sleep.
And as a result of that, they develop.
That's where her battered spouse syndrome dies, because I could go to bed and sleep for 14 hours without any problem. And she was in control. She shifted him all the time. Jamie's right. She shifted him all day long. And yes, I'm having my glasses on because I'm really nosy. And my brother lives at the harbor, and there's a lot of people walking outside, and I'm nosy. And there's a lot of big fancy boats. The Lego family has a really funny looking headquarters right over here in the water. That's I should have taken pictures of that. That's all.
Oh.
Strategies to cope with that: acquiescing, pleasing, doing anything they're asked to do, demeaning themselves, allowing themselves to be controlled. All of the things that would fend off, if you will, some abuse or attack or threat to them or someone who surrounds them. So those would be the components that you would need to have, and that dance continues to go on usually repeatedly throughout the course of that relationship.
So I think what you're describing is, in a sense, a subjective nature to the syndrome that's being described.
It's both objective and subjective. So objective in terms of the facts, like what's really happening. A person's being abused, they're being told certain things, there's control over them. But then the subjective part is the person's interpretation of that, their perception of that. So there's really both going on, and they have to kind of work together in order for this syndrome to be formalized and properly diagnosed.
You indicated that there's sometimes maybe some defense mechanisms that are, or strategies that are devised by the battered individual, the abused individual.
Yes, sir.
In your experience and your training, do controlled substances, alcohol, drugs frequently appear in your analysis or assessment?
Yes, and the way they appear is they can appear either from the abuser or the abused, or both. What can happen from the abuser standpoint is they may only be abusive, or the abuse may become worse if they abuse substances. From the abused standpoint, it may be self-medication. It may be a way of coping with the anxiety that there's going to be something bad that potentially could happen to them or somebody else. It's kind of a way of dealing with walking on the eggshells. So if I use substances, that can deaden the pain, if you will, for me, or help me to forget about it. So it's oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes part of either the abuser's behavior or the abused behavior.
Do they, in your experience, do they, on occasion, actually defend the individual that is abusing them?
That's a very frequent part of the syndrome. Not always, but it's very frequent. It's why interviewing them becomes difficult sometimes, because they're used to explaining away their behavior, the abuser's behavior, my black eye, my missing tooth, his screaming and yelling in the background while I'm talking to mom on the phone. So they're used to making excuses for it. It's part of the coping strategy, trying to explain away this behavior. He's had a bad day. She's, really upset about something else that's going on.
Who's yelling in the background when he's on the phone? He just said they start to explain it away because the bad guy is always yelling in the background. Who was it who called your brother and tell him that you choked me? He's diagnosing Jorge with battered spouse syndrome.
And these are all things that, you know, as a person who has been through this or something, you can definitely resonate with this. You change your behaviors. And for those of you maybe wondering, okay, well, why didn't Sarah just leave, or why didn't George just leave? It doesn't start out at 100 miles per hour right away. It starts out with, you know, I don't think your family is uplifting you the best. You know, they don't support you like I do, you know, and just planting those little seeds of doubt. And then, you know, I think you look beautiful without makeup. You know, why are you wanting to be validated by other people when you have someone who loves you at home? So it starts off very, very, you know, kind of just small things. And if you aren't paying attention or you let them go, it gets to that 100 mile an hour kind of phase. And you haven't noticed all the small little steps you took to get here. So
No,
it is very, very
you,
easy.
and you can always, well, if I just move that extra inch, you see it a lot of how many kids are made to save the marriage. If you just give me one more kid, I will change. That's how a lot of men are being wrangled into, and we never talk about men, but that's what many men meet. If she is really attacking him and stuff like that, she will try to use stuff like, well, if I just had a kid, if I just had, also preying on our protective sensibility, whatever you call it. And again, everything he just said that describes battered spouse is what Jorge showed. Well, she talked about how Jorge was treated. She was always in control. I took him from this room. I took him to this room. I had to change scenery. I had to do that. He didn't do anything. He just wanted to sit there. She was completely running his life. He couldn't have the phone. He couldn't have the car keys. He couldn't go anywhere. Everything was on Sarah time. And when she got drunk, she forced him to call his family and talk about how bad a person he was. It's kind of like when your wife calls your mom and says, oh, he's such a terrible husband, because they know the mom will call and say, you should do better. And there's nothing that can shame you like a mom.
True.
Going on. She's really never like this at any other time. So defending that person is oftentimes a part of the battered spouse syndrome, and getting the person who's been abused to get them to stop defending them so they can talk about the actual abuse becomes a challenge.
Now, the DSM makes reference on occasion to rule outs, I assume for the diagnosis that's being applied. What is a rule out?
A rule out in our parlance says that we should consider these things before we look at other diagnoses. So, for instance, if we're going to consider schizophrenia, we should rule out substance abuse first, because oftentimes some drugs can create hallucinations and delusions and psychotic symptoms. So there's always rule out, just like there are for medical conditions. So look for this before you consider this, is really what a rule out is.
Are there specific rule outs for battered women syndrome or PTSD?
Sure. So there's rule outs for everything, because you're considering a number of different conditions before you make a differential diagnosis, or you pick that's the one that I think best fits this person. So yes, there's rule outs for both of those.
For my sake, what is the differential diagnosis?
That's how you decide which ones, whether it's your medical doctor, your psychologist, whoever, it's how they pick the right diagnosis. So you're going through kind of a card catalog in your head, and you're saying, all right, there's symptoms of this, but that's also consistent with symptoms of that. So is it schizophrenia? Is it bipolar disorder? Now I have to ask more questions. It's a decision tree. And that decision tree helps you to inform the person and either make a diagnosis in a legal setting or help treat them clinically.
Now, if the individual, the psychologist who's doing the evaluation, identifies the presence of certain rule outs, what is their response professionally to those rule outs in establishing or assessing the patient?
You have to go down a decision tree. We all kind of do decision trees in our mind every day about what we should do or shouldn't do in certain situations. It happens automatically. It's more structured when you're doing it professionally. So if you have a concern about substances, then you would kind of take that track, and you'd have to ask a lot of questions in that area. So you'd want to know what kind of substances, how often are they using those substances, what kind of effect have those substances had on them before. I just picked one of many possible rule outs there. But every one of them you'd have to explore or ask additional questions, because, of course, you don't want to come up with the wrong diagnosis, because in a legal setting, that leads you to a bad opinion. In a clinical setting, it leads to bad treatment.
Now, I want to go back just a second. We talked about the subjective nature of the abused individual's understanding of what's happening. Does this subjective, or does the experience that they have suffered result in, on occasion, their experiencing or they're anticipating or assuming or imagining a threat that others may not?
Yes, sir. Yes.
He
What are
does have an avuncular tone, so I will say that he's explaining things in a very sort of easy to understand thing. I think when people look at what he's describing and her general attitude, the two do not mix.
Yeah.
Her presentation doesn't conform to that.
No, it's again, all the symptoms of abuser fits right into her narrative of her testimony yesterday. I was controlling, I was yelling in the background. I was the one who had to take charge because he couldn't do anything right. It's that demeaning. I'm hoping state is really ready for the cross on this one.
I think that so what I think the state did that was really quite interesting was I think they are going for their state's rebuttal witness with the defenses or the first original defense's battered spouse syndrome expert. So I believe they, evaluated the case, and that's why the case was first, or the case was first continued with the pay lawyer because basically the defense expert was like, yeah, no, this really isn't that.
And I believe this is the guy, or else it's Dr. Harper who will testify tomorrow, is the one who said, I can't put this in battered spouse.
Yeah.
Doctor, from what you described this morning, I think we're talking about a complex and sophisticated process for assessing and diagnosing PTSD, battered women, the matters that you described. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, sir.
And in this instance, a particular matter regarding the state versus Sarah Boone, were you approached about the possibility of doing an assessment as to Sarah Boone?
Approach.
Oh, good grief. This is a long one. Oh, he would like some water, please. Some snackies.
Okay, maybe it's just my read and I tend to read people really weird, but he seems like a really close talker that likes to just talk to you close and think like we're friends. And I would be slowly backing up, and he would just be like, hey, Mo, let's talk. Like, hi. I'm like, I don't know you. I will karate chop you. Do not stand closely to me as we talk about things.
He looks like he's about to eat the mic, too.
Yeah.
Well, let's check out Sarah. What's she doing?
So, other than Scuttlebutt on X, do we know if she's got a new love interest for real? Because I feel like that person needs a survival kit and maybe not to have any suitcases.
I think Pena is a love interest.
What?
Ooh.
Pena from the prison briefs.
Oh.
Her and inmate Pena was found in the bathroom.
Oh, they were. Ooh. I mean.
And I just have to say, I don't have Dr. Pepper at this house. I'm having the inferior Coke's cherry.
Ugh. Too sweet.
Just like I am.
True. Of course.
Doctor, when you
Coffee
are
nut.
retained to do an evaluation in these matters, what is your practice in regards to the assessment proceedings, the assessment efforts?
Well, I'd first want to know what type of an assessment that it is, because there's different methods of approach that you'd use to analyze and be able to give an opinion on whatever question is being asked of you. So the very first goal for me as a forensic psychologist is to isolate what the question is. So what are they asking me to do? Because I want to know, A, can I do that? Am I qualified to do that, or should I refer that to somebody else? Or B, is that something I'm going to have enough time to do and enough resources to do? And the next thing I would do is start asking questions about specifically what you already have or what can you get to help me answer this question. So right away, I'd start to find out what's available. As forensic psychologists, we're supposed to do comprehensive evaluations of whatever the legal issue or question is, and it's supposed to rely on multiple sources of information. So depending again upon the question, I'm trying to then define early on what are those multiple pieces of information I'm going to need to help to try to give an opinion, an educated opinion about that matter.
Have you done an assessment in this particular case?
No, sir.
Can you tell us very briefly whether that was your decision? Objection, no. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. I'll move on.
Objection sustained.
In your experience, Doctor,
thank you very much.
Can battered women's syndrome rear its ugly head? For instance, when there are threats to other members of the family, two-legged or four?
So yes, that's very common, that it's not just the person. It increases the terror from someone who's doing the abuse to mention other family members that they might also suffer abuse. So whether it's emotional or physical, those type of things are very common. Not always, but it's very common in the course of domestic violence cases or intimate partner violence cases.
And that fear that's developed by the abused individual may exist contemporaneously with other issues, alcoholism, schizophrenia, and the like. Is that correct?
Yes, so they can all be combined together. And certainly that increases if there's other family members that are threatened or live in the same home or close by. That can increase the terror. The purpose of that is to increase control, to make sure the abuser has more control over the person who's being abused.
1 second, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
So,
Yeah. Did he not?
So he didn't
Talk to
examine
her?
Sarah?
Nope.
The flippin'
in
the
doing an
flippity
assessment,
flip
Doctor,
is this.
Do you look at outside material?
Well, as I
He's just
said,
there to talk about it?
he's just there to explain what is BSS. And as I said, to no degree of medical certainty can he make any what is it they say? To a degree of medical certainty, yeah, he can't render any opinion on her BSS. So Dr. Harper,
Interesting.
Dr. Harper tomorrow will be the one who will apparently have been interviewing Sarah multiple times. This doctor went on court TV, I believe it was, and said, nah, she doesn't have BSS.
Right. Oh, excuse me. And the state, like when they cross, they really need to kind of emphasize that because you almost missed it.
Yeah.
And the jury might have missed that.
In doing an assessment, Doctor, do you look at outside materials?
Yes, sir, always.
And what kind of outside materials do you necessarily review in order to make this assessment?
Specifically to battered woman syndrome?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So specific to this, you'd want to look at a lot of different sources of information because you're trying to, A, make a diagnosis if there's a trauma-related disorder, but you're also trying to figure out if there's the other elements necessary to make the diagnosis as well, like abuse,
Thank you,
that's been
Vince
chronic over a
Corco,
period
for
of
the
time.
super sticker. It looks like either a high five or hands clapping. We didn't get our fist bump this morning. I do feel cheated and wronged.
Mm-hmm.
And that the person feels they can't leave that situation, and if other people have been threatened. So you'd want to know things like not only what the facts are of a particular incident, usually some crime that's been committed, but you'd want to know the history of those behaviors. Has anyone else seen those? Are there people you can talk to, friends, neighbors, bosses, anybody who's seen or heard of this abuse before? Have there been medical visits where the person has actually been damaged and shown up, made some other excuse, they slipped or fell or whatever it might be? You'd want to do psychological testing as a forensic psychologist because we have very good tests that help us to determine whether someone's suffering from a trauma-based disorder or not. You'd want to know if the person who'd been accused of the crime for this type of evaluation made any statements to the police. If they did, you'd want to hear that statement. Or has there been a 911 call or calls? If that's happened, you'd want to hear that too. So any evidence you could collect, these are some of those questions I was talking to you about before, you'd want to ask the person who's trying to hire you in the beginning, well, tell me what you have, because you'd want to see whether or not you're going to be able to make this analysis or not. So it's not good enough just to talk to the person, because that's just one form of information. It's almost like being a behavioral detective, if you will, as a forensic psychologist, because we're trying to get as much evidence wrapping around our interview with the person as possible to be able to guide our questions, but inform us and see whether there's what we call convergent validity. It's a fancy way of saying, does everything agree with each other? Does everything connect in a way that it all sort of makes sense?
Not with
Or
Sarah.
are these strange conflicting pieces of evidence that we need to explain away, or it just doesn't fit the criteria? So it's a rather comprehensive and complex evaluation that has to be conducted to come up with this. And the final piece I'd say about it is that because oftentimes the abused person is defending still the person that they've oftentimes committed a crime against, it takes a bit of time to get to where you need to go. With all victims of trauma, whether you're talking about situations where you're doing therapy or you're doing an analysis in this type of setting, a criminal setting, it usually takes some time to break through that and get them to trust you to talk about the trauma, but to stop defending the person and talk about the abuse and how they felt about the abuse. Your goal, if you will, is to be able to see what's happening in that situation through the abused person's eyes. If you look at it through your eyes, often it doesn't seem to make sense. But if you look at it through their eyes, if it meets the criteria for battered spouse, then you can better understand their world and what they're dealing with.
And real briefly, some of the things that you are evaluating when you examine, particularly the individual themselves, you're looking for anxiety and or fear.
Yes.
Low self-esteem.
Yes.
Are you looking for depression?
Yes.
Are you looking for any form of social or interpersonal withdrawal?
Withdrawal, especially if it's forced withdrawal, controlled withdrawal, if there's consequences to socializing with my family, my friends, calling them on the phone, texting them. So especially in that context.
Stockholm syndrome.
Sure, that can be part of it.
And what is Stockholm syndrome?
So it's really adapting to someone who's captive or taken over.
Stockholm syndrome has been ruled out. It's no longer a recognized syndrome. So that's BS again that he's using that.
Yeah, and I mean, why have this? So remember when we looked at the state's 50 witnesses, we were like, why have, 50 gajillion witnesses? This guy does have a good delivery, but if I'm a juror, I'm going to look, why did they invite someone to explain this to me when, he's not the doctor that evaluated her? Is there going to be something else that the other doctor says that is going to either make it difficult for Sarah or something? Why are we laying the groundwork now with this particular avuncular guy? And why are we asking about your nose getting broken by the trash can?
Right.
I mean, I
was
hold the Bradley on.
This is exactly stacking the deck because we have really nothing. They have to have them believe Sarah yesterday. And why are we getting a Psych 101 class when they could just call the expert who did the evaluation and clearly found that she was suffering from BSS? This is BS because this has no evidential value other than giving you a Psych 101 class. It has nothing to do with the case.
And why not utilize the doctor that actually evaluated her and tell her multifaceted sort of investigation? I mean, if it's going to be multifactorial, are her factors going to be exactly like his?
Right.
Yeah, I don't get it.
This is a waste of time.
Over a person, controlling their life, sort of adapting to that situation. The famous model of that would be many, many decades ago, a woman called Patty Hearst, who was kidnapped, but it's taking on the beliefs and taking on an acceptance, if you will, of a kind of a captive situation. And in these situations with women who have been abused, who meet the criteria for battered spouse syndrome, they oftentimes adapt, defend, and take on in an acquiescent way that this is okay and I'm part of this situation as opposed to the situation.
Will this syndrome exhibit itself in physical attributes?
It can, at times, even physical illness at times.
Inability to sleep, inability to
so her cancer
down, and those type of things.
Sure.
She didn't have that problem. She slept for 14 hours.
Potentially experience hyper.
What?
I said she didn't have any problem sleeping. She slept for 14 hours.
Oh,
I
yeah.
slept for 7 hours today, and that's with two
Yeah,
trips to my bed.
but it's also in the smaller things. She doesn't, when she is questioned, she doesn't say, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean it like that." There is not a jump to like not be argumentative. No, she strikes out verbally when she is questioned. Again, if you are terrified to death that you are going to get popped if you talk back, that is not generally the way that one talks to someone who they are deathly afraid of.
Right. None of this makes sense. This isn't even spaghetti at the wall. This is
just
generic
waste of time.
spaghetti.
And Winston
Yeah.
also asked if anyone was on probation. Jorge had a probation officer that was so fond of Sarah. They talked for 42 minutes. That's a weird thing, remembering 42 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
And she wanted to go down on her.
What? I missed that.
It was a closed caption.
Oh.
Oh.
It's like, well, that would have been useful information, but gotcha.
Well, that's a large part of it. Of any trauma-based disorder is hypervigilance. What changes when you've been traumatized, any kind of trauma, not just abuse, but what changes is your perception of danger. So whether it's the lid of the garbage can hitting on your nose, or whether it's someone being abusive towards you, those situations change your perception of danger. So you no longer see that object or that person in the same way. You have a foreboding sense of danger could occur. So other people may not perceive it with that person. He's so nice at work, or he's nice in these other settings, or he's so great on the softball field, but at home he's different. So that person who's being abused, their perception changes.
Does that include denial?
It could include denial, and oftentimes that's part of the explanation. The defensiveness of that person is the denial of how bad things are that are going on.
Thanks, Doctor. For this time.
Any cross-examination?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I'm sure.
Good morning.
Nice to see you in person.
Good to see you again.
So there's a subjective component to trauma, is what I understand you're saying, correct?
Always. Yes, sir.
And so hypothetically, a couple could be in a 3.5-year relationship with physical violence, emotional violence, even sexual violence, but either or both of those partners may or may not believe that is a traumatic experience for him or herself, correct?
Yes, sir. People mistake the stimulus about what happens as the trauma. The trauma is really the reaction to it. So bad things that happen, people don't always react in the same way to them. So yes, sir, that's correct.
So for instance, a homicide detective or a homicide prosecutor may go out to a scene and see a freshly dead body, and their perception of that environmental stimulus may be very different from somebody who works at Dunkin' Donuts and just gives us muffins in the morning coming across a dead body. Is that fair?
Yes, sir. That homicide detective may be able to go eat lunch right after it, and the other person who works at the donut restaurant may not be able to eat for a couple of days as a result. So yes, perception is a big part of how trauma occurs.
And I understand your answers today. And I'm not saying that they were different the other day, but I understand you to say that it's very important to do a comprehensive evaluation to get the full picture of what is going on in the perceived battered spouse mind. Correct?
Yes.
Oh, good grief.
Yeah, don't talk about. It's very important to do a comprehensive before you talk about anything.
Well, and it also goes, this needs to be said that this is going to be a perception thing. Are you going to be able to buy hook, line, and sinker that Sarah was deathly afraid of him when his hand was coming out?
Yeah. Yeah, the perception of this is the most dangerous thing you've ever seen in the world.
Right.
Because any reasonable person, that's always what a reasonable person will think. Someone playing, I'm doing the chicken. Probably, oh, someone is kayaking. Probably not the most dangerous thing I've seen in my life.
Yeah. But it's also opening, I don't think the defense realized that it's all subjective as well. Sarah may think that, she is portraying victim all the way, 100 victim points, awesome. But when we get to the outside people who are looking in, George's family, if we get there, the apartment manager, people around them are going to have a much more balanced opinion. Maybe not his family, but definitely the manager, Brian. And yes, I realize that Brian doesn't want to pay alimony anymore, but if I was married to Sarah Boone and I was having to pay for her and George to sleep, drink, and do nothing to watch my child,
Yeah, and she couldn't
let
even
him
do
not
that.
pay alimony. Yeah, just let the man go.
Yeah.
We've been talking about the importance of doing a comprehensive evaluation with as many collateral sources as one
Here it
could
comes.
possibly have when making an assessment about the battered spouse syndrome, correct?
Yes, sir. It's a relevant piece of information. Yes, sir.
And would you agree that obviously the person who is accused of committing a crime, there are credibility issues that you do need to care for when relying upon that person's history provided about the events leading to that and the past events describing the relationship with the intimate partner?
Yes, sir. In every forensic evaluation, that's the case.
Is this particularly important if there's a comorbidity with an alcohol abuse disorder?
Yes.
And can you tell the jury what alcohol abuse disorder means in the DSM-5 TR?
Sure. It's the biggest part of it is it's not just the use of alcohol, it's impairment that happens as a result. So it's the excessive use of alcohol, but that could mean something different, just like the excessive use of marijuana might mean. But it's the use of alcohol to the degree that it impairs or affects a person's life. And with that may come a lot of other things like deceitfulness or aggression or unreliability, sleep or somatic problems, difficulties. So, but the important thing to remember there is that it's the use of a substance that impairs or affects a person's life.
And if there is alcohol involved in the histories being given about either the event in question or any preceding events, must the evaluator take that into account when evaluating the memories and perceptions of the person giving them that history?
Yes. So in introducing that new topic about memory, we know that substances can interfere and impair memory. So as a result of that, you want to know what they were using, how close it was. If you're talking about a particular event, like a crime, you'd want to know if there was substance usage, and if so, what the person's memory functioning was, and does that match up with other sources of information about what those events were.
Are you familiar with the narcissistic personality disorder?
Yes, sir, of course.
Is that something recognized in the DSM-5 TR?
Yes, sir.
And can you tell us whether or not a person who is giving a history, whether it's the patient/client or whatnot, has traits, perhaps not a diagnosis, but even just traits of the narcissistic personality disorder? Is that something the evaluator should account for in evaluating the credibility of the history given?
Yes.
And why is that?
Well, because all forms of disorders or conditions or just traits may lead to inaccurate information, either not purposely or purposely. They may be deceptive. So certain personality disorders or traits can lead to deception or inappropriate or inaccurate information. That's why you need more than one source of information. Does what this person is saying to me check out with other sources of information?
And I don't mean to quiz you on it, but can you tell us some of the criteria for the narcissistic personality disorder?
I can, yes, sir. So it is a grandiose sense of self-worth. It's the consideration of yourself over anybody else. It's kind of operating your own world. So it's an inflated sense of who you are. It's a misperception of how important you are to other people, meaning to other people. It's a sense of specialness.
If the hat
you
fits
stand out.
Sarah.
Yeah.
Hey, Jamie. Marissa didn't want to pull you up, so I had to do it.
I'm sorry, I was listening to the man talk about narcissistic disorder. We need to check the boxes here.
Just, yep. Oh, that one too. I failed at all of those. Well, I'm an online grifter, so I am a narcissist.
This is all
From other
BS
people.
anyway.
Yes.
Like,
In terms of special.
you're just describing it in general. Like, it does not describe Sarah Boone by any means. So I've just been laughing the whole time.
Yeah.
Skill or skills, and that other people, if they don't recognize that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Terrifying.
That they should recognize that. So the biggest heading there is an inflated sense of self-esteem and grandiosity.
Are you familiar with an adjustment disorder diagnosis?
Yes, sir.
Is that in the DSM-5 TR?
Yes, sir. Correct.
Can you tell us about that?
Adjustment disorder is a person's reaction, and it could be emotional, it can be behavioral, or it can be both, to a situation that occurs. You broke up with your boyfriend or girlfriend, so you're upset about that. And so as a result, you're tearful, you're anxious or nervous or worried about what may happen to you as a result of breaking up with them, or you behaviorally may start not going to work. Or get into more arguments or fights with your children as a result. So it's a temporary reaction to a stressful situation that occurs in some individuals.
And hypothetically, if a person who is giving a history for criteria of diagnosis, let me strike that. If somebody is giving a history and that is being used to come to an evaluation conclusion of battered spouse syndrome, if that person has been diagnosed with adjustment disorder predating the traumatic relationship, is that something the evaluator should take into account?
You'd want to know any prior diagnosis because it may not necessarily be exclusionary, but it could. So adjustment disorder is a temporary reaction. You're upset, get a temporary, and most of them just go away on their own. Whereas something else like a traumatic stress disorder is long-term, something that person's stuck with for a period of time that usually doesn't just go away on its own. So yes, you'd want to know that. For that term I used before, that differential diagnosis, you'd want to know those things to compare and contrast them and hold them up against each other.
Now, hypothetically, if somebody says things like, I'm the best thing that has ever happened to you, and I'm the best you'll ever do, are those indications of a narcissistic personality disorder?
Well, it could be. You wouldn't want just that alone. You'd want to see if that was happening in other settings. Is it happening on the job, with friends, with family members? Is it showing up on psychological testing? But certainly that would be a red flag. You go, I want to pay more attention to that. I want to investigate that further.
And is it important when evaluating trauma-based disorders, because they're based on emotional reactions, to do that rule out on alcohol or drug use?
Certainly you'd want to do that. It's not usually disguised as a trauma-based disorder. Alcohol and trauma aren't usually rule-outs for each other, but it could exacerbate a condition. It could make you diagnose a trauma condition when it's just an adjustment disorder. I say just, I don't mean to minimize it, but it's not as serious as a trauma-based disorder.
Is it important to consider whether the abuser and or the abused behave differently in the absence of alcohol or drugs?
Yes.
And why is that?
Well, because you're trying to analyze a psychological condition. If as a result of drug or alcohol abuse, their behavior changes or their perceptions change, that's not a psychological condition, that's a substance abuse disorder. So that's why you'd want to know that. So if their condition remains the same, maybe it's a little worse when they're using drugs or alcohol, but it's the same perception of threat or danger, then you're going to diagnose a trauma-based disorder. If not, then you're going to diagnose a substance abuse disorder. You can have both, but you'd want to rule one out as opposed to the other.
And are you familiar with the classic three-step cycle of battered spouse syndrome or domestic violence?
Yes, sir.
Can you explain that to the jury?
Sure. So there's a cycle of violence that was first developed by a woman in the 70s called Lenore Walker, Dr. Lenore Walker. She's a psychologist who's usually credited with developing the whole theory of battered spouse syndrome. And in the classic model, which we know oftentimes happens, not every time, but in the classic model, there's a period of tension buildup where things are happening, little arguments are happening, there's bickering back and forth, there may be some threats or some loud voices back and forth, but it's all things that are leading up to a possible violent episode. Then there's the episode that happens itself, the violent episode. It could be verbal, sexual, physical, but there's the violent incident that occurs. And then after that violent episode occurs, there's a honeymoon phase where the person who's done the abuse, they're apologizing, taking that person who was abused out to dinner, buying them things, saying nice things to them, complimenting them to sort of make up for the abuse. And it's kind of it's called the cycle of violence. And the reason why is it tends to repeat itself in a lot of these situations with battered spouse syndrome, where you see this repeating itself over and over and over again. So people are kind of stuck in these revolving doors in their relationship.
And can one cycle be enough to traumatize a person?
Yes.
Does this trauma necessarily have to be coming from a man to a woman?
No.
And in fact, as times have changed, language has changed. And so when we keep referring to it as battered woman syndrome in the courtroom today, what we're actually talking about now is battered spouse syndrome or even intimate partner violence.
Yes, I mean, interpartner violence can happen outside legal settings, but it's really a kind of the large over grouping, if you will, to be able to talk about all of these other things that can happen as a result, like trauma-based disorders and battered spouse syndrome. And you're right, the later research has kind of pulled us away from thinking this only happens to women in heterosexual relationships. We know now there's all sorts of derivations, and that men can suffer also from battered spouse syndrome, battered person syndrome, homosexual couples. So we know it goes around to everybody, but still, women are more often diagnosed with battered spouse syndrome than anybody else.
Does the trauma have to come in the form of physical violence?
No, sir.
Does it have to come in the form of sexual violence?
No, sir.
Can it come in the form of emotional or mental violence?
Yes, sir.
And what examples of that include such as running the partner down and telling them that they're no good and, just general insulting and lowering their value?
It could. Remember, that's a stimulus, so it would depend on how the person who's receiving that responds to it as to whether or not it becomes traumatic. But yes, sir, that would be the first red flag you'd want to investigate.
And you mentioned isolation before. So if somebody in a hypothetical intimate partner setting is trying to isolate the partner from his or her family members or friends or coworkers, can that be, and I'm not saying necessarily, can that be indications of...
That's why she went with that lanyard. She knew she had to get in there that he isolated her. I bet you that lanyard story was BS as well. The car keys.
Yeah, because if this had actually happened, Sarah would have been shouting this from the roof.
Yeah.
Sarah would have said, missed no opportunity, even when she was trying to say they were the great, had the greatest day. I help him. I do stuff for him. There would be if there were any chance to throw him under the bus at that point, she would have brought out the lanyard thing. But now she has to show that he was controlling things, which again is a hard picture to paint when it was her name on the lease, when it was her, cell phone, when you saw her
car,
get
her
physically
money.
upset that he had a cell phone that his mother gave to him. I didn't know he had a cell phone.
And he needed her face to unlock it. He didn't even have the code for a shared phone. So again, everything fits correctly on Sarah Boone.
And if you think about it, even like she even kind of controlled when he talked to his daughters. Like, I bet you she prevented him at times from calling them and waited until it was like, he would be in a bad light and said, "You call them now."
Yeah.
I see her as that woman that's sitting there going, "You do this thing or I'm calling." Like, she was always threatening to call the cops. I guarantee it.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't put it past her.
I think he took her keys, but to stop her from driving drunk, not necessary to keep him with him. Yeah. But
could be.
Listening to all of this right now and go back and listen to her testimony yesterday, she have read what are the things that you need to hit in a battered spouse. And he wanted me to stay there. He was threatening my dogs because he doesn't have to threaten her. He never wanted me to leave, but it's her that constantly goes and say, "Hey, we're going to go inside now. We're going to go outside now." He took my keys. He stole my debit card. No, you gave it to him. You've stated that before. She's constantly the one, but because she learned what are the bullet points for battered spouse, she came up with that yesterday. I hope the jury is keeping this in mind when they're listening to this today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Intimate partner violence that could lead to battered spouse syndrome.
So sure, that'd be an example of coercive control. So if a person was doing that, that's consistent with that classification of battered person syndrome. Yes.
And hypothetically, controlling another person, the intimate partner's personal property or effects, such as a birth certificate or identification papers, can that be indication of emotional trauma towards the partner who is lacking the control over those identification papers?
So that's a stimulus that could result in the person subjectively perceives it in some trauma. So yes, all of the things that you mentioned could be stimulus, if you will, that a person could perceive as traumatic.
And hypothetically, if one partner A gives partner B a gift, such as a bicycle, but partner A continues to maintain that the bicycle is his or hers because he or she bought it, even though it was a gift to B, can that be a form of emotional abuse towards B?
Sure, it sounds like control, but I guess you could interpret it as emotional abuse too. But it sounds more like a control mechanism that'd be consistent.
I think you're onto something, Doc.
I'm not suggesting that it's legally or morally okay, but when one intimate partner does these hypothetical emotional things, non-physical violent things to partner B, if partner B has poor personal skills and coping skills and maybe consuming alcohol, is it unreasonable or unfathomable to hear that partner B responded with physical violence to partner?
Objection, assuming facts not in evidence.
You said hypothetically.
Yes.
You said hypothetically.
Yeah, he did say hypothetical.
Yeah, and I mean,
hypothetical. Why didn't you object before?
Oh my.
Oh, yeah, health and safety are out.
Yeah.
I might need 2.3 seconds.
Okay.
If I come back a little sweaty and with a very, very calm demeanor, it's why are you dressed like that for court? I know you're a beautiful young woman, but again, demure is.
So respond to that.
Also, with your dad,
After
I
hearing
don't
argument
think
of
he
counsel,
wants
the
to
objection
see
is
your
overruled.
jubblies.
So
As a dad,
Yeah.
no, not the first item. I never bought my kids low cut shirts.
I mean,
yeah,
you would think he would at least say something like, "That's not appropriate for court. I don't care what you wear."
Yeah, get it. Don't show cleavage.
But if she works for him, would that be harassment?
Harassment?
I'm sure there's some kind of litigation there.
Yeah. I don't know if she has a
It's not
career as a model, but someone said one day that she's an Instagram model, which means she has more pictures of her doing dog face in a field with sunflowers than of her food.
Right.
If you remember the question, please go ahead.
So it would increase the probability of physical violence. So if those things, in fact, were perceived as threatening or abusive in any way or insulting to the person who they were directed towards, it would increase the probability of physical violence.
And then again, the perceptions are all in the eye of the beholder, whether emotional things that are said to one another or physical things are done to one another, whether the recipient of that behavior views it as trauma is a subjective decision by that person. Right?
Yes, the perception is the impact. So that's how you would know that it's just, water off a duck's back, or is it something that kind of sticks with me and I think about it all the time.
Now, you mentioned earlier anxiety, low self-esteem, and depression can all be components of battered spouse syndrome, correct?
Correct.
Is it important as the evaluator to rule out whether or not these conditions predated the violent or abusive relationship?
Yes.
And why is that?
Well, because where things start is important diagnostically. So if all of those things are in place, all of the symptoms that were just mentioned are in place, then you wouldn't attribute those to the abuse. You'd say those things were pre-existing. Now, abuse could make it worse, but in terms of your diagnosis, you'd need to know where things started. So if those symptoms didn't start at the time where there was abuse that was alleged to have occurred, then it's unlikely that it's attributed to that abuse.
And independent of any narcissistic personality disorder traits, would you agree that anybody in a certain legal setting has a motivation to present themselves in a certain way?
Yes, to do impression management, either depending on the outcome. So if there's punitive sanctions, they may lie to make themselves look worse, or as a result, if they're in other settings, like divorce settings, they may lie to make themselves look better. So there's always some impression management you have to kind of look through in your evaluation.
And that's important for an evaluator.
It should be looked at in every evaluation.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any redirect examination?
Just want
Should have.
one more time, in response to the state's questioning, you indicate.
I feel like he should have ended, but did you evaluate Sarah Boone?
No, because they had an objection ruled on, so he probably couldn't do that.
But they already
Yeah.
brought it up on defense side.
No, there was an objection to it from the state, so he can't go back into it now. That if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. He objected to it.
Stated that where an individual's credibility may be in question, there is a necessity that the individual who's making the assessment do corroborate whatever they're being told. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, in a number of different ways. We have psychological tests that assess for things called malingering or faking mental health problems or difficulties. So you'd want to do that. You'd want to look at other evidence to see if it's all consistent. So it's very important you don't just rely on self-report.
It's possible that an individual may exhibit one or two attributes of a particular DSM diagnosis, but not actually qualify because it's simply not there.
Right, sure. So sometimes like social isolation can be because we're introverted, or it could be part of depression. So you need to kind of follow it out and see how many of the symptoms are there to see whether or not it meets the criteria.
So I may exhibit one or two symptoms of narcissism, but not qualify because I don't meet all of those, or a significant number of the indicators that you would rely upon to make that diagnosis.
Yes, or it can be situationally based, like we may display narcissistic features here in a courtroom, but may not do that in any other part of our life.
Now, in your experience, have you determined, learned, either through your studies, experience, and so on, whether or not the abusive behavior may begin based upon an individual's perception of things occurring to him as a child or her as a child? In other words, if they grow up in an abusive household.
Okay, I understand.
What?
Sustained.
So
You indicated that there are things that I think in response.
I'm having battered spouse syndrome because I grew up in an abusive household. But a battered spouse syndrome is related to your spouse. So wouldn't that just be that you had childhood trauma?
Right. You can't blame childhood trauma on battered spouse and unalive your partner.
Wait, so now they're trying to pull in that Sarah was from an abusive family structure that we know nothing about, that has not been brought up at all. So her perception of what a normal relationship is skewed.
Yeah, so you can unalive your partner because are they going to do the big reveal and say, hey, her mom unalived the dad too. They talked about when they passed away yesterday. So, it hit you when you were very young. But what does that have to do with an in-the-moment decision to unalive someone because you are afraid of your life? That's the thing when everyone is saying, it was so great yesterday. No, because they still haven't said what spontaneous action did she take that unalived him. She never took any spontaneous decision. She beat him up, went to bed because she knew he's going to be in there. I'm not afraid of him because if we fight, I'll get him thrown in prison again. I'm calling BS, but for all of those who think she's so believable, this is their expert. He just described her demeanor towards George.
Right.
And now they have to go with you sit on the wrong side of the, what do you call it when you're potty? Did you sit wrong on the potty and that's why you unalived your husband? It's such a stupid.
Yeah.
Well, here's my thing. I was thinking of this yesterday while I was watching like the video that she
Saving
took of him
Seals.
in the video. Yeah, well, Saving Seals. The video though, like, because she's claiming on her testimony that he was upset and then he was yelling and cussing at her while she wasn't recording, of course. But first of all, does he know she's recording? Probably not. He's in the suitcase. And he's just saying, hey, babe, let me out. I can't breathe. Wouldn't you think at that moment in time, he would be furious as ever, screaming and cussing? I would. I know if I'm in that space and I want somebody to let me out, I'm going to be. So he just got mad directly when you cut the video off, Sarah. Like,
Right after he was begging for his life, saying, I can't breathe, he turned into the Hulk, started screaming. Wouldn't you be screaming the entire time? And then you would start begging when the screaming didn't help. So if I'm on a high, if I get mad, which I do when I go on my rants, I'll start out yelling and then I'll taper off. I don't start, I'm so sorry that I really find this defense expert is maybe not the best for Sarah. Because what the effing is going, no, I would start there and then I'll taper off and say, oh, well, I'm sorry, I go on my rants. It's the adverse curve you have in a normal aggressive situation. You don't lay there and say, babe, Sarah, let me out. And then you go into, get me out of here or I'm going to effing you. She could have said he said that before she took the video and she wanted the video as proof that she was so scared. But sadly, he stopped right when, because she wants us to have him going from, oh, he's just crying wolf, till I'm going to unalive you and go back to cry wolf again.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking the whole time, because I'm just like, oh, he turned it off for the camera, Sarah, really? I mean, unless she said it before she started the video, which I highly doubt, I'm recording you. He doesn't know he's being recorded, so he doesn't know he's got to be a good boy on camera and pretend like he's begging for his life and he's not being crazy. No, none of that makes sense to me at all. So her whole depiction of like, oh, he was going to tell me he was going to end me. Freaking kick rock, Sarah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm trying to push play on the on StreamYard.
To the state's
I do that all the time.
That there are things that may add to or may contribute to a particular psychosis or symptom. Would an individual's background as a child include those type of criteria?
Yes, sir. You're more vulnerable to certain psychological conditions based on your history. So if you've been traumatized before or bad situations have happened to you before, if you've suffered from depression before, it makes you more vulnerable to those conditions or other conditions later on.
Finally, one question or one symptom that we haven't discussed, I don't think, or maybe it was discussed by the state, was learned helplessness. What is that?
Learned helplessness, I've really spoken about it a little bit, but now we have the fancy term for it. Learned helplessness was really researched by someone named Seligson, a doctor named Seligson, a psychologist, research psychologist. And just real briefly, what it is when someone kind of gives up and feels like there's nothing that they can do to change their situation. It was originally done with laboratory animals, but where a person really feels that no matter what strategy they've taken, like leave, stay, fight, whatever it might be, it won't work. It usually leads to depression or developments of other strategies, like I have to appease or please or make sure I do everything correctly or apologize. So it's really believing that no matter what you do, it won't be effective.
Doctor, thank you for your testimony. Thank you for
Yes, sir.
traveling up here from Miami so early in the morning.
No problem at all.
And to the rest.
Dang, Miami.
Thank you, sir. You can be excused. Thank you, Your Honor. Can the parties approach for a moment?
He's like, I'm taking my glass of water. I'm getting my money's worth out of this court. Damn it.
Oh, what you doing, Sarah? She's like, I don't believe any of this.
I said all the right things because I read the BCA 5 or whatever it's called. And this guy should just say Jorge was mean to me because he was so mean.
But it was not intentional.
Yeah. It was non-intentional, accidental game of teaching him a lesson, death.
Yeah,
Because
while
my daddy was mean.
Yeah, while she meant to leave him there to honor life because she was so afraid that she had to go and sleep for 14 hours and didn't want to pick up the phone because Brian didn't understand. I had so much to do in the morning.
Members of the jury, it is 10:40 at this time. We're going to go ahead and take that mid-morning break. Similar instruction I've given you over the last couple of days. I'm sure you're tired of hearing it, but I got to keep telling you. Please don't have any conversations among yourselves or anyone else about the persons, places, things, or charge involved in this case. And do not conduct any independent research on those things. We'll see you back here in about 15 minutes at 5 till 11. Thank you very much.
Alrighty.
If you just skip to live, let's see if they started up again.
Mr. Can you excuse Ms. Gallagher?
All right, thank you very much. Let's go ahead and stand and bring back in our panel.
Did we miss an outburst?
Counsel's table? Yes, Mr. Owens.
Judge, we had several late witnesses that were scheduled. What was that for this?
Several what?
Languages.
We've excused Detective Scott Lowen based on the testimony of Detective Cossel. We've excused Abraham Marino, who was under recall based on the testimony of Detective Cossel.
Protective Fossil.
You've heard from, but you got needs you've heard from Dr. Brand. Oh yeah, Galipoli is a young lady that's outside. She was a witness as a neighbor in that complex, and she would testify about observing physical injuries to Sarah Boone. We've spoken with her over the break that, in our opinions collectively, Tony Anderson and myself, that it's not necessary to call Ms. Galipoli if we have other evidence of injuries. There was disagreement about that, but I believe that Ms. Boone is now a believer that we're not going to call Ms. Galipoli. So that leaves now calling the Orange County Sheriff's Department phone extraction expert.
Mr. Wadden.
Yes, back to the stand. We've got two short videos. These are the short videos relating to George Torres with the bat and then striking the TV. They're less than a minute apiece. The problem with that is because we've excused so many witnesses. That's our last witness, so we're going to be done here in probably 11:15. And then,
But Ms. Walker is supposed to be here at 1 o'clock?
that's correct.
Okay, all right.
And then I haven't had a chance to meet with Dr. Harper, but I'm going to meet with her at lunch over next door. And we anticipate Dr. Harper this afternoon. And then we may be really close to ending the defense's case.
Okay, great. Thank you for letting me know that.
Yeah.
Okay, so
early lunch.
well, yeah, that may, well, if you're saying that your presentation with Ms. Wadden is 15 minutes, I don't know what the cross is going to be. It may be de minimis, or you may be saving her for rebuttal. I don't know. Mr. J or Mr. Cashtori? As it relates to Ms. Wadden, CSI Tech, you're not calling her a rebuttal?
During her trial testimony, during our case in chief, he said
Okay, awesome. So what we can do is we can proceed with Ms. Wadden, and we can just take an early lunch and ask them to be back here maybe 12:50. So that way, if we have any issues, we can address them before we start at 1 o'clock. Ms. Boone, you were sworn this morning. I just got a couple of things to go over with you. There was a list of witnesses that was provided to the court last night and again this morning as potential witnesses that may be called in your defense. One of those witnesses was Maria Galipoli. Your lawyers have advised that they may not be calling that person as a witness in this case. Do you understand that? And again, similar to other conversations we've had, I don't want to go into any specifics of any conversations that you've had with any of your lawyers, just whether or not you've had them. Have you had conversations with your lawyers about calling Miss Galipoli as a witness?
Yes.
Have you had conversations with your attorneys about why?
Major Mom, this morning they started out with a few police witnesses who didn't say anything other than they had been at the house and both had injuries. Then we had an expert in battered spouse syndrome who never did any examination of Sarah, and he was explaining what battered spouse is, and in the end, it sounded like he was describing Jorge. So, and now they just released almost all of their witnesses. So we are having a crime scene tech, watching some videos, and then Dr. Harper, who will be the final witness for the defense, probably going to end this afternoon.
Right.
And then I don't know how long.
I just have to say, Margareta, for anyone who can figure out how the hide and seek was played, there will be a special box of candy for the next giveaway, because she was it, but she hit. I don't know these rules. It must be prison rules.
It was combat hide and seek.
Yeah.
They are deciding not to call her as a witness. Yes. And similar to what we discussed yesterday, do you understand that your attorneys make the trial strategy decisions, including what witnesses to call or not to call? Yes. Okay. Are you still satisfied with their representation of you in this matter? Yes. And are you still on board with the strategy that has been employed in your defense? Yes. Are you in agreement with the strategy not to call Ms. Gallipoli as a witness in this case? I am. Okay. All right. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Did she say 9? That's very
yes.
German of you.
Thank you,
So they're not
Judge.
they're not bringing Brian up, or is the state going to call him on rebuttal?
I don't know if they can, because they didn't reserve him.
Oh, interesting. I thought Brian was gonna,
I thought they reserved all of him, especially
have to testify, and he was gonna look super terrible bad, and how mean he was to Sarah.
Right. No. I'm sure he's sitting there. I would be. Oh, they did reserve him?
He's probably going up there and the defense reserved him, not the state. I'm pretty sure that defense released it. No, the state released him, but I could be mistaken. But they can always subpoena him.
Defense reserved him for sure, because they were bringing him.
Yeah.
Thank you for being a member for 2 months, Laura Riker. Laura. We'll go with Laura, because I'm probably brutally murdering your name.
Yeah, Laura Riker.
All right.
Only if they're crooked. He's not allowed to wear them.
The state.
Oh, thanks, Bed.
Look at that. A whole year.
Woohoo!
Aww. It was the best year of your life, and you know it.
Yeah, that's the longest relationship I have had in a long time, Irish. About as much sex as in my last 5 relationships. What?
Then let's go ahead and bring our jury back in, and we can call Mr. Watt and go from there.
We don't see each other physically. That's why.
All right, thank you very much. Let's go ahead and stand and bring back in our panel.
Yeah, the other one saw me and still said, nope.
That's why.
But I have Galipoli.
But along, my brother's about to be home, so it'll be perfect if they end early. I can be back for the afternoon stream as well.
Ooh.
Marissa, you have to set it up in StreamYard.
What?
You have to set the stream up for this afternoon in StreamYard.
Okay.
If you can. Yeah, you know how to do that.
Wait, I think Mo's going to do it.
Mo has to do it then.
Well, no, I can do that. Yes.
Yeah.
I can do it on my phone while we are sitting here and not doing anything. It's just, I don't care. You can do what you want to do.
Oh no,
Well,
no, I know that
We're gonna be
tone.
back. I don't know. We'll figure it out.
No, Jess. We just give the other one a link and we can set it up in StreamYard.
President.
State, you recognize our jury.
Yes, sir.
Defense, do you recognize our jury? Yes. I thank you all can be seated. Members of the jury, once seated again, if you could confirm you complied with the court's instructions during our break by raising your hands. Record reflect all hands have been raised. Defense, you may call your next witness.
Judge, we would call forensic phone extraction officer with the Orange County Sheriff's Department, Officer Wanted. To the stand.
Thank you. We'll bring her in.
Please swear or affirm that testimony you give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do.
Good morning, ma'am. Could you state and spell your name for the record for us?
First name is Janella, Junella. Last name Wadden, UAD as in Delta, AN.
It's a hot mic.
Counselor, you may inquire.
So, again, your official title,
Digital forensics examiner.
and are you referred to as a detective, or what did you?
Just an examiner.
Ma'am, Judge, can I approach the witness?
Yes, of course.
Ma'am, I'm going to show you what's been marked as identification defense exhibit AA. And you recognize that video, or that CD of the video?
Yes.
Well, I think we kind of prepped you on it ahead of time. That was extracted from a Sarah Boone phone that you were asked to extract?
Yes, one of the media files, yes.
Okay, and is that video a fair and accurate depiction of one of the videos that was extracted from Sarah Boone's phone?
Yes.
And then identification Z, if that's identification, same type question. You've had a chance to review that video, and is that one of the videos that was extracted from Sarah Boone's phone?
Yes.
Judge, this time I'd like to have these introduced in evidence.
Any objections?
Well, a platonic relationship then.
He's like, no. We are not committed. This is not a commitment. We are just friends.
Okay. What was pre-marked as AA will be received into evidence without objection as defendant 17. What was pre-marked as Z will be received into evidence without objection as defendants 18.
We're going
to play exhibit 17 first.
You may proceed.
And is there a volume? Judge, do you have control of volume?
Volume is on.
You're gonna help me take this shit out. Real shit. You're gonna help me take it out. You're gonna help me take this shit out.
Sorry, can you pause it?
She looks like she's participating with him.
Marissa, can you pause it? That was a TV that was ruined. That it's a piece of S. You're going to help me take it out. And he said, I really don't want to. Can you try and go back a little bit? I think he ends the video by saying, I really don't want to, or something like that.
You're gonna help me take this shit out. Real shit. You're gonna help me take it out. You're gonna help me take this shit out.
What does he say in the end? It's not like I want to, or something like that.
He doesn't. I'm sorry. This demeanor of him does not seem.
No, he's not mad.
No, and I heard the exact same thing you heard in the beginning. It says, this is
Yeah.
a piece of, this is a piece, like.
Yeah.
It was
I
nothing
thought it
what
was
she
gonna.
described, is what I'm.
I thought it
This
was
was my
gonna see
question
like
too.
him just wailing on it.
Like, did he already hit the TV once, or was it broken
Yeah.
before this? Like
Yeah,
he's like,
there was two baseball marks in it, but I bet you the TV was ruined and on the fridge and Chris and
Well,
because there's two looks like it's been hit twice before, but he says something and to me it sounds like he's saying, I don't want to do it. It's not like I want to do it or something like that.
can you just
But again,
play it one more time?
But again, you don't have an overly reactive guy, overly aggressive guy saying, "This is your TV. This is what I'm going to do to you," which is what I expected. This thrashing of the TV. There's another video. Maybe that'll show him in a way bad light. But I just hear, it's not like I want to do this or something like that. He is
all right, I
not
have it at normal
very
stream.
enraged.
I have it at normal speed
Yeah.
now. So I'm like,
You're gonna help me take this shit out. Real shit. You're gonna help me take it out. You're gonna help me take this shit out.
Look at him. He's like defeated right now at the end. Like,
It just almost sounds like it almost looks like he's play acting in it. I guess
Yeah.
I was assuming that he was going to be wailing on the TV like you never talk to him again, you don't look at him again.
Yeah.
Why was he in my damn house? And instead, it's like this is a piece of crap.
That I read that
know.
totally different than the story she was telling. And
Yeah.
the picture they showed.
I wonder if
was
she
gonna
remembers it
I thought
differently.
he was going to be cussing her out and
Yeah.
like saying, "I'm going to do this to your face."
And why is she taping it?
Yeah, if you're so terrified of him,
Yeah.
if he is wailing on your TV, you are terrified of him.
You're not pulling out
I
your
know
cell
from
phone.
yeah, nothing is going to enrage someone who doesn't want this particular part of their or aspect of their personality out there like you trying to record it.
I think maybe she's done it and now expects him to take it out, but he's fed up and says she has to help him. Maybe. I don't know. I think
Yeah, it kind of sounds like I don't want to or as bad as I want to. It could have been
Yeah.
either of those things. I couldn't really tell.
And Adelaide Lass, it's him we hear on it. And again, if I was in a relationship with someone who I feared a lot, or she was fearing me waving a bat at her, I would expect whimper. I would expect her being in an emotional state. She's just calm with her camera.
It's not even shaking. I mean,
he's not even that upset, to be honest with you. He's sitting there with a baseball bat ready to hit a TV, and he seemed in a pretty chill mood.
yeah.
I mean, is it
And
me
she
or is
didn't-
that right?
The video is stable. Like she's not like backing up. I don't know.
Weird.
I don't buy it.
That was not what I expected. For sure.
I would just say I have trashed the TV before on purpose, not in an enraged state, but because we were actually, it was one of those big old one, and it was going to be thrown out. So we went to bet on it just to see what could happen. And you get in a heightened state of emotion when you just trash something like that. And he's just, the way he looks down to the side. Again, I got recommended Dr. G today, probably because I talked so much about body language. But that's not a guy who's going to F you over in 2 seconds.
No.
Yeah, it also, again, person in front of you, deathly afraid of you, or deathly afraid of them, he has a bat. He's already shown that he will hit it on the TV. You pull out your camera and record it in landscape, for him. No, No, things that would never have crossed my mind in a past life. That would be one of them. Now, after, I could see her taking pictures after it, like,
Yeah,
but to
prove
just stand
he
there.
trashed the apartment.
Mm.
And Boone keep threatening him with arrest many times. Is that a form of abuse by him? No, that would be a form of abuse by her, because that's take control of his life, that I can make you go away again. And JVH, it couldn't be the son, because the son would have been 6 at that time. No matter how gifted he is, I bet you his beaver nuts hadn't fallen that far down that his voice would be that deep.
Yeah, I don't know. His demeanor though was not what I expected. That was weird.
Maybe the second video is where he is saying,
Yeah, maybe
this is what you get
considering.
for not cooking the steak and having smicks with me.
Okay.
The
I mean,
frickin' stick.
yeah, maybe it's escalated. Who knows? You might be surprised.
Judge, I'm asking you to publish Exhibit 18.
You may proceed.
He doesn't even have the air to beat up a television.
Yeah,
He gets
that,
winded by beating up a television.
He gets winded.
that just isn't at all, again, and he's not screaming like, this is because you're, you're,
You did this to me. You're the fault. I have
Yeah.
to do this, or I would have to do it to you. Those are the reactions I was expecting. And
yeah,
again,
or why did your husband
That's
come
what she
over?
had
I told
said,
you.
right? Because that was
Yeah.
her testimony, was that he was screaming these things at her. So that's why
Yeah.
I was expecting that. But okay.
and
Yeah.
again, totally calm. She doesn't scream, don't do it, don't do it. She's just filming him to put it on Instagram or whatever she's doing. And the reason why he gets winded, I bet you that's because he had that clogged artery. This guy haven't had a full breath in years because he had that clogged artery, 75% blocked. But he could. It'll take away your way to. It'll take your breath away when you're. My dad died of reduced heart function and lung capacity because it can't move the oxygen around your body, and he's exerting himself. He's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times, and you can hear he's out of breath.
So, alternate theory here, again, she has ultimate control on him. Let's do, I want to show them destroying this TV. Like, hey, we're going to destroy this TV. We're going to buy a new one. Now she has this video. I just need to show officers you destroying that TV. Is that a
There is
tattoo
a
or
bruise
a
on his
bruise?
neck.
Possible. That's
It
the
looked
thing
like
is,
it.
I don't really know the context behind, like,
No,
other than what she says, right? Because, I mean, she could be right there, like, if he's not saying anything and I'm not hearing him say anything to her in a way like,
Is that a tattoo?
can't see if it's a tattoo or a big bruise.
but
But try
maybe
and
she's
big in
rooting
the
him
screen.
on. Who knows? She could be like, yeah, let's trash this TV.
No, pull us off the screen so it go full screen.
Oh, right.
Doesn't look like a tat, does it?
It could be.
Yeah, it's hard to tell.
It's too
Yeah.
blurry.
But again, this is a man who is so enraged that instead of beating her up, he takes it out on the TV. He can't even swing for the television 3 times without having to stop because he has no power in his body because his heart can't move oxygen in his system.
Yeah, I don't think this video is showing what they think it's going to show or what
No.
it it was purported to show. We were going to hear George yelling at her, "I'm going to F you up. How dare you, you skank hoe, letting your ex-husband come in here." And of course, this heifer would have a laugh damn sign in her house.
Oh, he does have a neck tattoo.
He does.
Oh.
Thank you, Jemima.
All right.
But still, that guy is supposedly beating her up on the regular. Try watching him again, just taking a few swings, and you can hear he's totally out of breath.
Yeah, he takes big, deep breath.
Yeah, am I making this up, medical personnel in chat? That he sounds like he's not getting oxygen enough around his system, and that's why he tries to. I heard that with my dad the last 3 months of his life.
He's a big smoker too, so.
Yeah.
And he doesn't eat, so he might not have energy. I mean, I don't know how much caloric energy you get from a handle of vodka, but.
Yeah, but it reminds me of my dad, because constantly when I was with him and we were trying to just walk five steps, he had to stop and because his lungs weren't working. So that's not an angry guy. That's a guy who barely can pick up a baseball bat and swing it. That doesn't show what I thought it would show.
Say again, sir.
We spoke about it earlier.
Yes, understood.
Oh, there's more?
All right, thank you very much.
Oh.
This witness can't be released, correct? Dave?
Again,
Thank you.
I had a buddy who had twice extensive
momentarily, please.
arteries, and it was the same. He couldn't do anything without getting out of breath, and again, no context. You're totally right, Furiel.
Members of our jury?
Well, that's what I mean. There's no context to it. I mean,
no.
Were they in on this together? I mean, other than what she said, which was no, he just did it out of rage.
But Becca, he had
this TV's broken and we need to get rid of it. Oh, let's go hit it with the baseball. Like, who knows? She could have been like,
yeah, let's make fun of it and have fun. And couldn't it be fun to trash the TV? But with a 75% clogged artery, wouldn't you be severely out of breath? But again, everyone who started the day saying defense won yesterday, how do you feel now? Maybe do a poll. Oh, you can't do that because you're not on my YouTube.
I can do a poll.
Yeah, because what we're seeing here, first of all, is completely out of context. There's no anger whatsoever. Remember, this is the guy who completely flipped the script on her 24/7. She was always in fear. She's standing. I took a video walking with Monty this morning, and there was more shaking in that one. But she's steady as a rock.
Mm-hmm. She's not backing up. She's not. She's just standing there filming. Like a bozo.
Yeah. And if he were really the aggressive, mean type, again, he doesn't want evidence. He doesn't want this coming out. He knows Sarah's going to use this as, collateral against him. She's proven before that she will, give him a debit card, then say he stole her car, stole her debit card, lock him out of the house, send him to his family. Apparently, according to the state, give him a bike, then constantly try to take ownership of that bike again. I mean, these are all very classic controlling behaviors of an abuser, not the abused.
Yeah.
I mean, they're both trash in my opinion, but like she was in control.
Well, yeah.
From what I see.
I'm just saying, everyone who said yesterday was such a magnificent day for the defense because she got to lie on the stand. You had an expert testifying that all of her behavior is classic battered spouse syndrome. I feel every good thing they did yesterday, they took away today. And the state has been really good today. I think they went home, looked on a few channels and said, we didn't do good enough yesterday. And and all of a sudden they turned up the heat today because they had the expert testify that everything Sarah did was typical battered spouse perpetrator, not victim.
Yeah, and this is not a case that's going to be black and white. This is where you are going to have to really judge if you believe Sarah's testimony with her inconsistencies, her not remembering things, her being Schrodinger's drunk, or you believe the facts.
Yeah, and again, you'll have to say, oh, she's lying now 4 years after where she had time to study what is battered spouse syndrome. She has been able to change the story, and that this is the evidence they put in of his abuse towards her. Him beating a TV, and I can't hear clearly what he's saying, but to me it sounds like I don't want to do it, or I can't do it, or something like that.
Yeah.
Where is him? The videos, I taped him all the time because I was so afraid. Where are the videos where he's telling her that you better measure your coffin because I'm going to end you, Buttercup? Where are the videos where she's crying in the bedroom while he's trying to force the door open? Where are the videos of her being beaten up constantly? And where are the videos where she's going around the house taping him saying, I just want to leave, but I can't? There's no hard evidence of any violence. Yes, she has some black marks, but we know she was a feminist. She was a giver just as well as a taker.
Yeah.
Yep. All right.
At this point in time, it's 11:08. I know it's a little bit early, but due to the pacing and how quickly we've been moving through the evidence this morning, and how the defense has teed up their witnesses for this afternoon, we do not have anyone until 1 o'clock. So at this time, we're going to go ahead and take our lunch break at this time. I'm going to give you a similar instruction that I've given you over the last couple of days. Jurors, you must not conduct any investigation on your own. This includes reading newspapers, watching television, or using a computer, cell phone, the internet, any electronic device, or any other means at all to get information related to this case or the people and places involved in this case. This applies whether you are in the courthouse, at home, or anywhere else. You must not visit places mentioned in the trial or use the internet to look at maps or pictures to see any place discussed during the trial. Jurors do not watch local news or read local newspapers. Jurors must not have discussions of any sort with friends, family members, or even your fellow jurors about the case
a lot of
or the people and places involved. So do not let anyone make comments to you.
Believable. This story sounds credible, and she got to tell it, and there wasn't that big of a pushback on it. So a lot of people were thinking, oh my, she's going to get out of this. I said it when we started this morning. All of us wine moms, we don't have to fear, because again, this is the defense. Dr. Harper, for me, will have to come in and say, on this date, on this date, on this date, she was clearly this and this and this, bring in medical records showing the abuse. We saw in the AHJD case that even with evidence, well, she invented the evidence afterwards, but I can't see Sarah doing a good psych eval. I bet you that the state will also take Dr. Harper. And I asked before if anyone have the CV on Dr. Harper, because they had that medical expert who hid all the body parts in his storage unit. I don't know if this Dr. Harper has a great reputation, is a great witness, because sometimes an expert witness doesn't have to have any facts. They can just be very good at testifying, or they can be really bad as Dr. Spenkel, who didn't have the facts and looked like a bold, what are they, the vultures?
Eagle?
No, not an eagle, the carrion birds.
Vulture.
Just called vultures. Well, but I think the state have come back today. That's my opinion. But what am I? What do I know? And again, Go back and listen to her testimony. Her entire testimony was, yeah, and then we went to Denny's and we had a Big Mac and they beat me up, and then we were watching some TV, and yeah, he slapped me around a few times, and I like that Diet Coke. It's they have a little extra syrup on it, and he punched me in the stomach. There was no tonality difference. It was so studied. It was so planned. I know it. A lot of people were, oh, she got to tell her story and they didn't hit back. Mo have been saying this the entire time. It feels like the state is looking at the jurors. And we know with DV victims, don't go hard on them. They get sympathy.
Well, but if you remember, so go back to Kyle Rittenhouse. They tried to ask him one question, and you could see that he was currently dealing with just anxiety over the roof, trauma. So when she got stabbed in the leg, she didn't go like a calming breath to just sort of get back into this story. It wasn't even, because as you tell stories, if they are real, you tend to relive them. And, you know, there are things where I'll tell you guys stuff and I'll have to slow down, take a breath, and kind of collect myself to move on, because you are walking through that story. She didn't have to. When she got stabbed, it wasn't like tried to make this dinner and I got it all set up and he came in and he was already upset.
And it's
then
unbelievable.
I know,
rather have smacks with her than a good steak.
yeah, and I know if I were telling the story, I would probably start hunching up. So I knew, I was like, look, start, you know, I'll cut your meal. Do you want some more cream cheese or something on there? You know, you're going to have different inflections. And she was just like, yeah, he said no. And then he stabbed me. Then my lips turned blue and I, you know, lost all the blood in my body. If you were sure that you were going to lose your life that day, it would be imprinted on you. You would not be able to tell that story in a blasé sort of way. It would be incredibly difficult.
Right. And also, like, her whole excuse, like, well, who's going to drive? I can't drive. You're drunk, blah, blah, blah. She would have called an ambulance because she doesn't care about money. Brian pays for everything.
No. And if she was the, you know, bestest mom ever, she would be like, I have to live for my kid no matter what. So, you know, you either give me that phone or I'm going out and I'm making a scene in front of the neighbors and I'm getting help somewhere. You know,
exactly. Crazy.
This chick is so ridiculous.
She makes my brain hurt. 100%. My brain hurts. People are asking, you know, was that defense that brought these witnesses or state? I think these witnesses aren't really helping the defense.
No, I don't think they are. Again, I think people are going to have a knee-jerk reaction when they saw those pictures. And, you know, Sarah is good at making herself the victim. So without any context, because the state kind of foreshadowed to it, like, what are you notorious for, Miss Boone?
Yeah.
What will people say you are notorious for? And it's going to be interesting to see how other people in her life perceived her, because right now all the jury's gotten is Sarah, you know, explaining how Sarah is perceived. I'm guessing that's going to be a little different once rebuttal comes in.
Yeah, and we'll just have to see it falling out teeth, how it's going to extinct. Well, that's why she asked if she should cut it for him. And again, you don't have 2 cents to rub together, but I'm going to buy a steak. We are so poor and so alcoholic, we swapped from drinking vodka, which I think you can buy a very, very big jug for less than you pay for the wine. You are going for the effect, not the taste, when you are an alcoholic. So that's other BS. It's her that said, I'm classy. We are drinking wine. We are not drinking beer. We are not drinking vodka. That's alcoholics who do that. She's one of those ladies who back in the day would hide the Madeira in in the cleaning cupboard so she could have a few during the day. She's such a liar.
Back in the day, that's how I do laundry. What are you talking about?
Well, I'm trying to hide that we are the white moms of the internet now.
Oh,
But,
good point.
and didn't Brian also say vodka was a choice of drink? Yeah, she never did drugs, but she liked vodka, I believe. She did coke once at the bar. But I'm still saying BS to all these people who will sell you that, oh, she's going to walk now. No matter that there's a DV victim on the stand, in whatever capacity it is.
I think keeping her on the stand for less time, I think that was just poor timing of when they had.
Yeah, it was
had her.
5:45 when we ended yesterday.
That jury didn't want to hear anymore. They wanted to go home. So keeping them longer wouldn't have helped them, I don't think.
No, if you had started, you could even get her, this Ice Queen. Imagine getting her to cry. That would have been even worse than just letting it slide. And I'm still, I'm going to pack up the laptop and hopefully be back so I can watch the Dr. Harper thing, because she has, in my opinion, this is going to rely totally on her, that she proves she was a victim. And hold up on cross-examination, because the first expert, when cross-examination happened with him, he just testified Sarah was an abuser. Everything he said fit with everything Sarah testified about yesterday. I was totally in control. I took away his liberty. I constantly made him phone up his family, and I was screaming in the background. I killed, I was being choked. All of this is classical behavior of BSS. And they put that witness on the stand, and he didn't even talk to Sarah. Why get him on there to? I see it as lollygagging. We're just stacking evidence that could be something. So I don't know. Yeah, but we'll be back at a little before 1.
Yes.
I'm saying I don't have the power to end it. Well, I do, but
I'm trying to figure out which is your outro these days.
now a new album, maybe number 4 or 5. Just play one of them. It's be fine.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Ciao.
Bye.
What exhibit are you referring to?
I'm going to make this 100, Your Honor.
All right.
100. Because it is 100% correct.
Objection, Your Honor. So you literally built a cannon?
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
All
right, I'm in love.
Go back. Please do that again. Oh, that was the cutest thing I've ever seen.
While I'm waiting for this, did you, whether it's true or not, believe that Mr. Randolph had slept with your wife?
I wouldn't care.
You wouldn't have cared?
No.
Did you believe he had slept with your wife?
No.
Did you believe he slept with your mother-in-law?
Probably did. Everybody has.
So there.
Everybody has.